There you go. Perfect. And then if you can make me host, then we'll be all good.
Yeah, okay. Let me just get this closed.
Good morning, Todd. Thank you for kicking it off. I'm going to hand it over to Kathy to welcome everybody.
Okay, good morning, everybody. All right, we had that last little bit of housekeeping to do. So welcome to the second day of the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour. My name is Kathy Kramer, and I'll be your host for today. So we thought we would just start a little bit early here and let people log on. So good morning, Anne. And I hear Todd is here. And I don't see the people on the side. Can you make them come up, Mike, so I can see what's happening here? Participants, okay. All right. So I'm curious to know, I still can't see the people on the side. Can you help bring me up these people here? So as people are logging in, it'd be nice to know if people were here yesterday or if you're just joining us today for the first time. Please just do it. I don't know what to do. And you could let us know if you are new to native plant gardening or if you're an old hand.
Mexico City.
I'm still having some trouble. I can't see what's on the side. Okay, I can't see their comments. People are making comments. Sorry, this is why we start a little bit early too, so we're not doing this a little bit later.
A lot of folks joining us who were on yesterday. That's really great to see. We even have somebody from New Mexico. There's people from San Mateo. Welcome. So we're figuring out our startup settings and all. And we won't start till 10, right, Kathy? Because we don't
actually start at 8 minutes to 10 with the program. So now we're set on this end. Sorry about that little lurching beginning, but that's what happens when you only do this once a year. So I'm Kathy Kramer. Let's do a little round robin of introductions here just while people are logging in. Jessica, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Jessica. I'm the Zoom Zarina. So if you have any technical issues that you run into, feel free to direct message me on Zoom. You can also text me at 650-804-9044, which I just put into the chat. Some people don't like to see the chat popping up all the time. If you would like to not see it anymore, on the bottom of your screen, just click chat, and then you won't see it rushing along the side, and you'll be able to see more of the videos. So feel free to reach out. And everybody did a great job helping each other last time. And we're really excited to see everybody do a good job doing that this time. Thank you all so much. Stephanie, do you want to go next?
Yes. So I'm Stephanie Prugel. Welcome, folks. And if you didn't make it yesterday, we'll have all the recordings from yesterday on the Garden Tours YouTube channel. If you're not yet signed up for the YouTube channel, go to the homepage and there's a big YouTube button. You can see what's on there. You can subscribe so you'll get notification when new stuff's up. Lots of good things. I will help with comments, questions, and such today. So you see the Q&A at the bottom bar of your window, and that's the chat. It's actually even better if you put your questions in the chat so everybody sees it, and we do kind of like a crowdsourced response team, because we're not experts on everything and you guys all know some stuff, so maybe the chat primarily, but Q&A is also okay to put your stuff into. And after the presentations, we'll take a few minutes as time allows to ask the presenters questions. So let's see, I think that's all I have to say. I think we have 1 more minute till we start the pre-program music, which is beautiful. And then the content's going to start at 10 with Anne, who's already on here with her husband. Hello, guys.
And we have a couple of our garden ambassadors on this morning, Martha Griswold and Todd Guylands, and they'll be helping to answer questions this morning. So thanks very much for joining us. And we have somebody on from Tarzana, Southern California, some people who are returning. Ed, if there's any questions that you have, then you should go ahead and you can just pop them in the chat. Right now we have a little bit of time while we're waiting for the pre-program to begin.
Okay.
So Anne, how are you doing this morning?
Good, good. Hey, I had a question for you. So when we get to like our segment, you're gonna run the videos, right?
Yes, I should have said that just so you aren't nervous.
Yeah.
Actually, Jessica does it. Then we know we're
Right,
really
good.
confident hands.
I was just reading the email and it talked about how you could share the screen. I thought, oh no, am I supposed to run it? So, okay.
Are you ready for the pre-program music?
Yes, let's go.
Lovely.
That's a comment.
Should I break the little
Well, good morning. Welcome to the 18th annual Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour and our third online tour. Today is the last day of the online tour. And why don't you raise your hand if you were with us yesterday and are able to rejoin us again today. I'm tour coordinator Kathy Kramer, and I'll be your host for this program. And we're also happy that you could join us now. As people are registering and getting settled, I'd like to begin by thanking the team that has made this event possible. So let's see, Mike, we should bring it over to me. Can we do that? So we could say hi to you for a minute. So I'd like to introduce my beloved husband, Mike. Let me pop in here and say hello.
Hello.
Mike is my best friend and also my IT guy for the last 30 years. And as ever, he'll be helping me with the audio visuals, and I'm sure you'll see him drifting out in and out of my screen throughout the day. Let me introduce Jessica. Jessica, good morning. So thank you for being with us again this year. Native plant gardener and Zoom expert extraordinaire. Jessica responded to my call for a Zoom Czarina last year, and we feel very fortunate to have her help again with this year's online event. If you have technical issues with your audio or visual or trying to use the chat, you can contact Jessica by direct messaging her through Zoom, or you can send a message through YouTube. If you can't figure out how to use the chat, you can text or call her, get a pencil, at 650-804-9044. Now I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the team that has made today's event possible. So good morning, Stephanie.
Hi, Kathy.
So Stephanie is a terrific colleague and friend, and I have appreciated all of her help with the tour these last few years. You might have seen the terrific presentation Stephanie gave yesterday on her own beautiful garden in San Leandro and the many green features of her home. If you missed it, you can view it later on the tour's YouTube channel, and you can see it on Saturday, January the 30th, when it'll be open on the in-person tour. So let me share a screen now. And I'd like to thank our garden ambassadors for this year online throughout these yesterday and today. We have Martha Griswold, Robin Mitchell, who is steadfastly managing the YouTube channel all by herself, Jessica Dickinson Goodman, Sundong Kwang, Sandra Navala Lee, Stephanie Preugel, and Hope Salzer. If you have any questions today or comments, just type them into the chat. We're using the chat, not the Q&A, so we can just stay in one stream. We'll get your questions answered. I'd also like to thank our post-production team, Deb Stevenson, John Timothy, and Mike and Kathy Burst. And they'll be the brains and brawn behind getting the recording of this year's program up onto the tour's YouTube channel so it can be viewed later. Thanks are due to Saxon Holt from Photo Botanic and to Jerry Kiffey from Plant Master for allowing us to use their photographs. I'd like to thank Jane Rudebush for making the beautiful maps that you'll be using to find the gardens on this year's in-person tour. Jane did a terrific job, and you can appreciate her work later on this week when the links to the maps and garden addresses are emailed out to you. I'd like to thank the videographers who responded to our call for help and donated their time to make a video for this year's tour. Jonathan Ruckless of Ruckless Videography is on the upper left, and Maurice Phillips and Jason Bull are on the right. I'd like to thank Georgette Howington, Bruce Mushrush, and Mike Azevedo from the California Bluebird Recovery Program, who deserve an award for filming, editing, and producing the 6 video series on gardening with native plants that features garden tour host Al Kyte in his amazing Moraga garden. We showed a video of March and April in Al's garden yesterday, and you'll see the month of May, which is peak bloom in Al's garden today. The other videos are on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos are posted. I'd like to thank all the hosts on both the online and the in-person tours and the more than 100 volunteers that made this year's tour possible. Also, I'd like to thank the stalwart supporters, our major sponsors, the Alameda County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, the Contra Costa Clean Water Program, the Contra Costa Water District, and the Clean Water Program Alameda County for their continued belief in this program and the funding that makes holding this tour possible. I'd like to thank our other funders as well for their support. Most of them provide it just year after year. Thanks to Chambers and Ed McAlpine, our hosts who are with us today. And thank you to these funders as well. Today is the second and last day of the online tour. The in-person tour will take place at the end of this month. This is the first day we've had a 2-day in-person tour. And so this year, the Bayside Gardens from Pinole to Fremont will be open on Saturday, April the 30th. And the Inland Gardens from Martinez to Livermore, including Moraga and Orinda, will be open on Sunday, May the 1st. So let me quickly run through our agenda for today. We had a cancellation, so we'll be ending at 2 o'clock instead of 3 as we had planned. We'll start off with a brief presentation on the 10 best native plants for shady areas. Our first garden visit will be to Chambers and Ed McAlpine's Moraga garden, and it will include a tour of their green home features. You can visit their garden on Sunday, May the 1st. Then we'll visit Amelia Petrovic's garden in Oakland. And in the afternoon, we'll have a preview of the inland gardens that you can see on the in-person tour. We'll hear a talk about pruning manzanitas by Pete Veilleux from East Bay Wilds. And then we'll visit 2 more gardens. It'll be Kyte's garden in Moraga, and then Weiss' garden in Livermore. And we'll be done at 2 o'clock today. So I'd like to ask if you can help support the tour. It takes more than a year to coordinate each event. This year was an especially challenging year to coordinate the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour for a few reasons. First, we're offering both an online and an in-person tour for the first time. Next, the in-person tour is a 2-day event for the first time. And we've also added a new Green Home Features component to both tours. If you haven't yet had the chance to contribute, please help by making a donation now. You can do so via the donations button on the tour's homepage at bringingbackthenatives.net, through Venmo at Bringing Back the Natives, on the tour's GoFundMe page, or you can mail in a check. The tour's address is under Contact Us on the website. Orinda Books has again made the tour a great offer. You can purchase any of the following 7 books from Orinda Books, and a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the tour. I know this is only 3, but there's 4 more on the next slide. You'll also be supporting Orinda Books, a local small business in this case. The small business is owned by longtime garden tour host Pat Rudabush, whose lovely native plant garden in Orinda you may have visited in the past. You can call Orinda Books at 925-254-7606, or you can order online at orindabooks.com. The benefit books are any of Doug Tallamy's books, The Nature of Oaks, the bestseller Nature's Best Hope, or Bringing Nature Home. In addition, you could order any of these California-specific gardening books, Designing California Native Plant Gardens by Alray Middlebrook and Glenn Keeter, Garden Allies by Frederic Lavoie-Poirier, Native Plant Gardening for Birds, Bees, and Butterflies in Northern California by George Oxford Miller, or California Native Plant Gardening, a month-by-month guide by Helen Popper. So the East Bay Municipal Utility District is now offering a super rebate for planting with California native plants, which is just fantastic for a water district to do this. You can receive $1.50 a square foot for removing your lawn and planting with California native plants. This is double the normal rebate. Here are some before and after photos of 3 gardens that received lawn removal rebates from East Bay Mud. This is Gretchen Pavanka's garden in Alameda. It is on the tour this year, and you can visit it on Saturday, April the 30th. This is Cliff and Sharon Watts' garden in Richmond. It's been on the tour in the past. This photo was taken when the garden was just about a year old. It's more mature now, but I don't have a photo of it at that time. And this is Maria Sargent's garden in Danville, which has been on the tour in the past, although I don't have it this year, but is just a beautiful garden. So sustainable landscaping, like the gardens seen on this tour, are critical for water conservation. If you still have a lawn and are thinking of making the switch, you can check out EbMud's landscape rebates. The new super rebate is $1.50 a square foot, which is double the standard rebate amount. To get a super rebate, you must use best practices, including sheet mulching to remove the lawn, adding compost to replenish the soil, choosing a majority of California native plants, and planting in the cool season from September through February. So you can plan now and plant later. If you already have a garden, EbMud has updated their mulch coupons, which are available for use at local nurseries. You can check out the super rebate and mulch coupons and other ways you can save water outdoors and inside your home by visiting ebmud.com/watersmart. So let's go now. If you heard Doug Tallamy yesterday, or if you've heard him before, you know that he has said by including native plants in our gardens, we can create life. And by using non-native plants, we can prevent it. And by now, I'm sure you're dying to know what our own local keystone species are and what are the best plants to include in your own gardens. Yesterday, I talked about the 10 best native plants for sunny areas. That presentation will be going up onto the tour's YouTube channel. And today I'll be telling you about the 10 best native plants for shady areas. So you don't have to worry if you can't take notes fast enough, because you can revisit this presentation later on when it is on the tour's channel. And you can subscribe to the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel to be notified when new videos are published. So if you're just joining us now, this is a talk, it's a follow-up to Doug Tallamy's talk about the special importance of certain native plants to wildlife. Doug Tallamy calls these keystone plants because they hold the ecosystem together. To learn more about this, I hope you'll visit the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel, and a Doug Tallamy talk is pinned to the top, and you can hear more about why he's recommending these certain plants. So this is pink flowering currant. It flourishes in shady areas. It's a tall, deciduous shrub with long, showy pink flower clusters that cover the plant from January to March. Birds enjoy the berries. It has a beautiful scent. Good companion plants are huckleberry and ocean spray, both of which you'll see in a bit, as well as coffeeberry, toyon, snowberry, and columbine, and 122 species of lepidopterans, which is the shortcut for butterflies and moths, can lay eggs on this plant. This is huckleberry. It's a long-lived evergreen shrub that bears berries that are enjoyed by people and birds alike. This is a good companion plant to the pink flowering currant that we just saw. Other companion plants are shade-tolerant manzanitas, such as the woolly leaf manzanita, the glossy leaf manzanita, the redwood manzanita, and yerba buena. And 106 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. Wild rose is a fast-growing, tall shrub with fragrant flowers that bloom in the spring and summer. The hips can be used to make tea. Wild rose is a versatile plant. It can be grown in full sun, part shade, or full shade. It's a fast grower, it spreads, and it has thorns if you need a barrier plant. And 95 species of lepidopterans can lay eggs on our California rose. This is Manzanita uva ursae point rays. It's a prostrate manzanita. It's a great ground cover because it's just between 2 and 5 inches tall, but it'll spread to 10 feet wide. Great companion plants are Manzanita point rays and 2 of our California lilacs, the mountain lilac and the low blue blossom lilac, and 68 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. Ocean spray, which is also called cream bush, has cascading clusters of fragrant white flowers that give the plant its two common names. This is a nice replacement for baby's breath in bouquets, and 75 species of lepidopterans can lay eggs on ocean spray. So these are some super versatile local native keystone species that can be placed in both sun or light shade. So there's strawberry. It's evergreen, Fragaria californica. It's a versatile ground cover. It will grow in full sun to part shade, and 58 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on it. This is a photo of our perennial native aster. And I love this picture in particular because it was taken in my own garden. I remember when that picture was taken, it was so beautiful. Our California native aster thrives in full sun to part shade. It's deer resistant. 53 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on it. And here's goldenrod. This is a showy yellow flowering perennial. It blooms in the late summer to fall. Good companion plants are sages, wild rose, penstemon, and yarrow. 55 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on it. California honeysuckle is a climbing deciduous vine with large pink flowers that attract hummingbirds and red berries that attract other birds. This deer-resistant plant goes well with snowberry, hummingbird sage, toyon, oaks, and more. This is a beautiful plant. I have it in my yard, and actually I started it from cuttings that I took from a plant that I found in the wild. So you might be thinking of yours. Well, here are photos of commonly used non-native ornamental plants. There's cosmos on the left, hot lip sage on the right, lavender on the left, and pride of Madeira. And if you have these or other similar plants in your garden, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I have a lot of non-native ornamentals in my garden, and the butterflies and bees love them. If you've heard Doug Tallamy speak, you know that butterflies and moths can take nectar from many plants, but they can only lay their eggs on a very few species of plants. So the analogy that comes to my mind is, well, what if you and I could have all the free coffee at Starbucks that we wanted, but we couldn't reproduce? We would have a population crash also very quickly. The point is that non-native ornamentals do provide nectar and pollen. Particularly, they're good for our non-native honeybees, which come from Europe, but they have little value to butterflies and moths, our own local native butterflies and moths, when it comes to reproducing. So butterfly and moth populations are not limited by a lack of nectar, but rather because there are not enough of the right plants on which they can lay their eggs. And as a result, bird populations are reduced because there are not enough caterpillars with which they can feed their babies. And that's where we come in. So you've probably heard of Marie Kondo and her Does It Spark Joy method of decluttering a home. And I hope that after this talk and this weekend's presentation, that you'll take a Marie Kondo look at your own garden and ask yourself, does this non-native ornamental give me joy? And if it does, then keep it. If a plant came from your mother or you especially love it, or it's a scent that you remember from your childhood, you should enjoy it. If it does not, then you might consider replacing those plants with California native plants that will provide food, shelter, and nesting areas for wildlife. So if you're wondering where you can buy native plants, you can check out the nonprofit Native Here Nursery in Berkeley. Local native plants provide the best habitat for our local wildlife. Native Here is run by volunteers. You can contact Native Here to see how you can join their knowledgeable team, learn about local California native plants for your own garden, and help Native Here achieve its mission of restoring local gardens and parklands. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Native Here Nursery, your source for locally native plants in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, for supporting the tour. Native Here is an all-volunteer project of the California Native Plant Society's East Bay chapter, and it's dedicated to growing plants from ethically collected seed and cuttings from Alameda counties. You can visit Native Here online at nativeherenursery.org for information about gardening with locally native plants, ordering plants for curbside pickup if you'd like to do that, or to find out the hours when you can shop in person. If you have questions or if you'd like to volunteer, you can send a note through the website or call 510-549-0211. So I'm going to be introducing our first hosts and garden for the day, Ann Chambers and Ed McAlpine, who have attended the tour since its inception in 2005, hired 4 Dimensions Landscape Company to design and install their peaceful and productive garden in Moraga. In the backyard, the swimming pool, lawn, and Monterey pines were removed and replaced with, just a second. So let me just say before I leave the slide that this video that we're going to see, I don't want to forget to say it, was heroically made by Ann. She is not a videographer. I know you'll be shocked to hear that. She actually has a completely different career, but she did a great job on her video. And also I want to say that you can visit their garden on Sunday, May the 1st. So let me go now to talk about the garden. In the backyard, the swimming pool, lawn, and Monterey pines were removed. More space for growing edibles was created, and the balance of the garden was planted with mostly local California native plants, which make a charming understory to the 30 fruit trees that they have planted. One of my favorite garden tour stories, and Ed, I'll be telling this, I'm sure, till I die, is that during the online tour in 2020, while listening to Doug Talmy explain how non-native ornamentals provide little or no value to wildlife, Ed asked Ann where agapanthus originated from. And upon hearing that agapanthus is a non-native ornamental from South Africa, Ed got up in the middle of the talk and tore them out of the ground. So in a cooler moment, he and Ann reviewed the rest of the non-native ornamentals in their front garden and eliminated those that they didn't absolutely love, plus those that didn't survive the no water regime that was implemented this summer. Return visitor alert. You'll see more natives in the front garden this year. Ann and Ed also have Tesla solar roof tiles, 2 lithium Tesla Powerwall batteries, and an induction range. And we'll be hearing about them today. And you can also learn about them on Sunday, May 1st, if you visit their garden. And we're delighted that a locally produced climate-friendly cookbook has recently been published, and you can purchase this cookbook at Ann and Ed's garden on May 1st. And on that day, you'll be welcome to step inside their kitchen, see how their induction range works, and enjoy a taste of some of the delicious recipes from this cookbook. And you can ask the author to autograph it for you. So let's go now and meet Ann and Ed. And so we'll bring them up, and thank you for joining us today. And I guess I have to stop sharing. Okay. There we go. It's one of those lurching starts. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for joining us. So is there anything that you would like to say before we launch into your video?
I don't think so. I don't know,
That-
except that Ed helped too. It wasn't just me.
Yeah. It's the, the garden continues to evolve. The things we put in, there are things that that thrive beyond all expectation and things that don't. And, it is not the same garden it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it keeps evolving. We've planted more fruit trees. We went for more citrus, and we're continuing the micro farming too. So yeah, it's fun.
Okay, let's watch the video and we'll learn more about it.
Welcome. My name's Ann Chambers, and this is my husband, Ed McAlpine, and welcome to our home. This video tour will cover two broad topics. The first is our green home features, and the second is a tour of our native garden with particular emphasis on the keystone plants. So we're going to get started talking about our green home features, and really there's 2 of those. The first is our Tesla solar roof. and battery system. And then the second is I'm going to bring you into my kitchen, and I'm going to show you my induction cooktop. So to get started on the solar roof, I'm going to hand it over to Ed, who's going to talk about how we decided on it.
Thank you. When we were first looking for a new roof, it was triggered not by a desire for solar, but because we had a structural issue with a heavy tile roof on low-pitch rafters that was somewhat overstressed. And I began looking for a new roof that was going to be lighter weight, strong, and my other requirement was that it be fire or ignition resistant. And as I was doing my research, I discovered that Tesla manufactured a roof that was not solar panels, but the actual tiles that made up the roof itself were active photovoltaics. And after a little more research, that's what we decided on, and that's how we ended up with a Tesla solar roof. All right, here we are looking down at the roof. As you can see, the roof is made up of individual tiles. They look like shingles from a distance, but they are in fact a tile made out of a glassy material. On the south side of the roof, about 2/3 of them are active and 1/3 are dummies. And here you can see from the south side. Okay, welcome to my garage workshop. This is the infrastructure for the solar roof. These are the power walls. There are 2 of them. They're basically large batteries. They're set on the floor, then anchored to the wall, and they've been paired one over the other. This is the inverter, which takes the current from the roof and converts it to appropriate waveform and voltage. This is the controller, and this actually distributes the power according to the way that it's programmed, and acts as a gateway to shut off the system from the grid if the grid goes down, and operate independently, and features such as that. And this is a load center. It's a 100 amp load center. It operates the entire house, or everything that's run through solar. The house originally had a 200 amp load center because it had a pool and some other current drains which aren't around anymore. So it's been bypassed. It's still there and could be reused, but basically this mirrors the functions that it had and takes care of distributing power to the house. The batteries we have set at a 20% reserve. The batteries even out the power usage between day and night, so that during the day we collect energy and at night it draws from the batteries. But because one of our objectives is to have some resilience in the case of power outages, we've actually set a floor of 20% on battery discharge. So the batteries will only discharge down to 20%, and at that point they'll draw upon the grid. But that's completely up to the user to change or reprogram. We could set it to 0 to cut our power usage, but that's the choice we've made. Okay, here is a screen save of the Tesla app from a phone, which shows the graphic they give you. And it basically shows that the roof is generating 1.8 kilowatts, the home is using 0.4, and it shows the distribution of the power from the roof. It shows that we're not giving anything back to the grid, and that 1.4 kilowatts are going to the power wall, and that it's charged at 56% right now.
So to recap on our solar roof and battery system, we've had it about 9 months, and we've found that in the long summer days that it captures more than enough energy to power us day and night. In fact, in August, we were finding that we captured about 50% more than we needed to power the house in any one day. And so that, of course, goes back to the grid. However, when we get to the shorter days of the winter, we do not capture enough to power us for a whole day, and we do have to draw from the grid. We found that in December we needed about 50% of our power to come from the grid. Now, we think when we true up with PG&E at the end of a year, that we will, on balance, have delivered more energy to the grid than taken it. And we hope to get a rebate, of course. Now, the second thing that this system has been wonderful for is the resilience to power outages. For whatever reason in our area, we seem to get a lot of unplanned power outages. For example, people can, run into a power pole on the windy roads here. And since we've had this system installed, we've had many power outages, and 4 in particular were more than an hour. And in all cases, we didn't notice a thing. Maybe there was a little flicker, and we would get a text from Tesla telling us that there was a power outage and Tesla was taking over. But otherwise, we haven't, everything just continues on as usual. So for that, we are very grateful for the energy independence that we have. Welcome to my kitchen. We're going to go into the segment to talk about and show off my induction cooktop, which is about a year old. So by way of background, in 2011, when we remodeled the kitchen, since I'm a big cook, I got a fancy gas burner range with a high BTU burners. But I have to say, I found that they really had some limitations. And for example, for the burners, you can't really modulate it so that it both simmers and goes to very high heat at the same time. So when the range stopped working and it really didn't make sense to fix it, we decided to go with induction. I had used it at a friend's house, and I was pretty familiar with it. So let's talk about this a little bit. This is a glass top. It's all electric. It's using electromagnetism to heat as opposed to thermal heat that you'll get with gas. So this one has 4 burners. And you're going to come in a little bit and we'll talk about some of the controls. Here's how some of the controls work. First, you have to put your finger down on this lock. So what is great is you have to really unlock all these controls. You can't have, in some cases, I've seen cats can walk across the top and get it started. So in this case, it's great because you have a lock against that. And then what you do is you put your finger on the. So in this case, I'm heating up this this burner, and in this case, there's a boost element, and so it boils water, I think, in 4 minutes. But the key thing is you can modulate the heat extremely rapidly. So, just with a touch of the finger up and down, and it's even, steps down and up very evenly. So it really makes for much better cooking actually than the gas cooktop that I had previously. One of the other things that's great is if you take off the pot, it will not continue. It will turn itself off automatically. So, which I love because from time to time I've screwed that up in our gas stove and left the gas burner on. One of the other great things about it, of course, is it's not very hot. It doesn't, generate heat and all the various vapors and things that a gas oven does. So, the final thing, the final benefit is it cleans up very easily. So you can just clean it up as a glass cooktop. So with that, I think those are really, so all in all, I love it. It's way better than the gas stove.
All right, well, that was great. Thank you so much. So there were some questions that came in during the video. After this, we're going to go see a video of their garden. So we broke this presentation up into 2 parts so that we could stop after each part and ask questions specifically about it. So one question that I have is, have you seen much of a difference in your PG&E bills since you put your solar panels on? So,
Oh, yeah, we
Okay.
have. It's like zero for electricity.
Right, there's a true up that's coming in October, but
Right.
basically, because on average, we're giving them more power than we're taking, what we get is a notice that, the $9.99 or $10 that is the basic hookup charge has accrued, but we're not actually billed for it at the time. It's all, put off till the yearly true up because we're contributing to the grid.
yeah. So let me say that we have solar panels too, my husband Mike and I, and our bills have ranged between $17 and $53 over the last year because we also are putting more energy into the grid than we use. And I know Stephanie has solar panels and her bills have been about, well, we all have the $10 per month hookup charge, but her bills have been $4 a month because all she has left is her stove. And she's just not using much gas. Let's see. So how do you like your induction range, Anne?
Oh, I love it. I love it. No complaint. I mean, way better than gas, than the fancy, chef kind of gas stove.
Yeah, there's no, parasitic extra heat from running it, so that, the energy is going into cooking. It's not making that end of the kitchen unlivable on a warm day or anything like that. So it's a lot more seamless.
Well, actually, I like it from a cooking point of view because you can often with the high BTU cooktops, you can't really, it might cook really, very hot, right? But then you can't get it down to a simmer all in the same burner. But with this, I just tap it a little bit and it goes down a little bit. I mean, it's super also responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have an induction and range as well, and we also very much enjoy our induction range. Can you talk for just a moment about your pots and pans?
Well, I was lucky. So they have to be magnetic, and you can test whether they're going to work by just seeing if a magnet, sticks to them. I'm lucky because I have I have cast iron, which is magnetic, and then I have all clad. And so I only had a couple of pots that had copper in them that I couldn't use. So we were lucky, and I only bought like one. So
Anne had all clad pots. We had to buy new pots when we got our induction range, and we got Tramontina, which is a very nice pot. So let's see, someone asked if you have air conditioning.
We do not, actually. We use a whole house fan, which we just installed actually last year. I didn't know about them. So between a whole house fan, which draws in the cooler air outside, usually at night. And so it's very effective at that. Between that and then a ceiling fan and then attic fans, we've kind of got it down. And then, of course, we just close everything up when it gets very hot. But we do not.
We have a long-term plan to replace the current gas furnace with a heat pump arrangement, which would provide us with, air conditioning just by, reversing the flow. But our service guy found us a very good deal. Unfortunately, it's still stuck on a ship someplace in the logistics disaster. So we have no idea when that's going to get installed. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just tell people quickly that we've talked about heat pumps a lot yesterday and this morning. And if you'd like to learn more about heat pumps, I did a webinar with Amy Kaiser from the East Bay Green Home Tour last fall. And if you go to the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel, you can watch that webinar and learn more about how great heat pumps are. We have one. And also, I didn't know before, until this last year, that 20% of the homes in our country use heat pumps for heating and cooling. They're common in the South. They're just not so common here in California, but they're starting to catch on. So someone asked if you have changed your habits with regard to using power in your house since you have your solar system installed. And
we actually, we
Well, we used to try to use it on non-peak hours and things. We signed up for that PG&E thing. Now we don't worry about it. In fact, sometimes I walk around and I'm turning off lights like I'm used to for my whole life. And then I think, oh, well, I don't really have to worry about it. We've got more than enough. So it's
You have
effective
both
at that.
more than enough, and you're also storing your own energy
Right,
in your
exactly.
own battery. So when you use it, you're just pulling from your battery and then you're replenishing the battery the next day. So I'd like to also answer that question and say that we're also on a solar panel time use deal where it's much less expensive for us to use energy from midnight to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it becomes more expensive. So it's not a big deal. I just throw in my laundry in the morning. We make sure our dryer load is finished before 3, I think it is. Yeah, 3 o'clock is when it increases. We set the dishwasher to run after midnight. So they're small things. They're not necessary because we really have like such a low, or at True Up will have no PG&E bill, but I feel like I just want to give as much energy as possible back to the grid. I feel like our climate crisis requires that all of us try to give energy back to the grid. If you have a roof that can take it, get solar panels. They're fantastic. It's so fun to watch how much energy you make. It's so great to feel like you're contributing energy back to the grid so it doesn't have to come from a dirty source later on. So it's not necessary, but it just makes one, at least us, like more interested in doing the right thing for the climate. I think now, why don't we leave the green home part of your tour, and we're going to watch a video now about their garden, and then Ann and Ed, I'll ask if you would stay on afterward if you'd like to and answer any questions online that we didn't get to. So Jessica, if we could go look at the garden video.
We are.
Hi, I'm Ann Chambers and welcome to my garden. I'm joined here by Michael Thilgen from 4 Dimensions Landscape Design, and we'll be walking through some of our favorite plants with you. So we had been long time Building Back the Natives attendees, and when we took the leap to take out our backyard pool in 2015, we naturally decided to re-landscape in natives integrated with our fruit trees and vegetable garden. Our front yard is north facing and was landscaped in 2 stages. First, in 2016 and 17, we took out the lawn that was in the left section and replaced it with fescues, sedge, heuchera, Douglas iris, and toyon. Our second stage resulted from the Doug Tallamy talk at the Building Back the Natives tour in 2020. My husband was so inspired during the talk that he walked out front and started digging up our agapanthus in the middle of the talk. It turns out he never liked them and was looking for an excuse to get rid of them. But that triggered a reassessment where we tore out every non-native plant except the handful that we really loved. And then with the help of 4 Dimensions on the planting plan, we added several keystone species this past fall. Keystone species are those plants that disproportionately support our ecosystem by hosting a high number of butterflies and moths that support bird life. So the first keystone plant we'd like to highlight, one of our favorites, is this oak tree. So Michael, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. This is the coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia, and it's a characteristic tree of the East Bay. It really gives a lot of the flavor of the landscape that we have here in the hills. It's a plant that supports a huge range of biodiversity. So if you're looking to enhance habitat, the coast live oak is a real good one to plant. Not only do they support the biological community very well, but they're also very helpful as landscape design elements. This is a young tree, and it's about maybe 15 feet tall now, but it will be double that height or more at maturity, and it will spread quite wide, and that generates much needed shade, especially in a warm area. So we find this a versatile and wonderful tree that really represents the nature of this region very well.
So from my point of view as the owner, well, first of all, just knowing that this is super high up on the Talamy list of the number of species of birds and caterpillars that are supported, this was a volunteer just 4 or 5 years ago, and we found that it was in a perfect location, so we just let it grow. And so it's only about 4 to 5 years old. Here are some examples of some mature oak trees.
So this is the Toyon, Heteromeles arbudifolia, and this is a remarkably versatile evergreen shrub that grows in very sunny, exposed areas, and it also tolerates fairly deep shade. It tolerates heavy clay and lighter soils, so it's a really valuable plant to work into a native garden because it allows us to generate screens where there might be undesirable views. We can plant a few Toyons, and before too long, it just looks beautiful.
Okay, from my point of view, I just love Toyons. They're just totally happy. We've had several volunteers in the front yard from the plant. It grows pretty rapidly. It's evergreen. It's great, as Michael mentioned, as a fence or a screen, and it has wonderful red berries in the fall through the winter from small little white flowers that blossom in the spring. We've had one volunteer on the other side of the yard that grew 2 feet over the summer with absolutely no water, so they're very drought adapted. So here's a photo of the Toyon with its red berries and a close-up of those lovely red berries.
So both the oak and the Toyon are native not only to this region, but to this particular garden. Seedlings have occurred naturally, spontaneously here. And because our goal in designing native gardens is to imitate nature as closely as possible, we're delighted to find this precedent for us to build on. We know that we're on the right track when we see these plants occurring naturally on the site.
Okay, we're running.
So this one is Ribes viburnifolium, the evergreen currant. It's native to the Channel Islands in Southern California, where it occurs naturally in dappled shade. And here we have it growing on the shady side of the house under the oak trees. These are young plants right now, but they'll be growing up and kind of sprawling and billowing, staying fairly low, about 2 feet high or so, by 4 or 6 feet across. Very well adapted to this area, shady area.
All right, so just a quick comment. This is, we just planted this year, so of course the evergreen currant's going to grow, but I have to say I'm already loving it because, number one, it's green and it's happy and we've got it everywhere, and so I'm fully expecting it to really enhance the front yard. And it's also very high on the keystone species list, the Talamy list. Here's a view of the mature plant, and notice the dappled shade. Hi, welcome to our backyard. Michael and I are going to take you through a few favorites here in our backyard. So the backyard was the main focus of our landscaping in 2017 and 18 after we removed the pool. The yard was landscaped with grass and Mediterranean drought-tolerant perennials. So we worked with Michael at 4 Dimensions Landscape to design a native garden that was naturalistic and beautiful, something that we would want to spend time in, and could feel that this was sort of our secret garden. Of course, the birds, bees, lizards, butterflies, and many, many hummingbirds have been a huge benefit. So just a quick comment on Toyons. You'll see that we have the Toyons are planted as a screen so that we don't have to look at our neighbor's ugly fence. So just wanted to point out that how effective they are as a screen. Okay, this is a Julia Phelps ceanothus, one of my favorites. It's a keystone species, and I love the vibrant, deep violet flowers that we get in early March. It attracts a lot of native bees, which are very much smaller than the honeybees. And it's one of the first spring blossoming plants that really ushers in spring. I love to look at it from my study.
This is a ceanothus that's very effective incorporated into a screen, as we see it here, mixed with the toyon. It's a fast grower, and within just a few years provides a really beautiful show and a very effective mass of foliage.
Here are some closer views of the ceanothus flowers.
So looking at this ceanothus after the Julia Phelps, this demonstrates what a widely ranging genus ceanothus is. Some of the species are very prostrate and spreading, and others are almost tree-like in height with a number of different forms in between. So overall, ceanothus are a wonderful addition to the garden.
Okay, this is a centennial ceanothus. It's a great ground cover that grows on the hill. It also has really lovely violet flowers, just like the Julia Phelps ceanothus, and really deep green leaves. And it's not flowering yet, but it's almost about to, and it's March. So again, it's a very early bloomer. Here are some examples of the centennial ceanothus in flower. So this is one of our manzanitas. They're a little bit slow growing. This one is probably 4 years old, but they are also very hardy. They have lovely white small flowers and then berries in the spring. And when it's mature, it's a really lovely sort of sculptural plant. And of course, it's very high on the Ptolemy scale of being a keystone species.
Manzanitas are also highly variable in stature. They are prostrate, they are tree-like, they are in between. In this particular part of the garden, we were aiming to have a low screen so that there is definition between two adjacent areas.
Here's an example of a mature manzanita, which is also in flower. Look at those lovely little teardrop flowers. So this is a native fuchsia. This is what it looks like in the March time frame. But by the end of the summer, it's going to take over this whole area. It's got lovely bright red flowers, or bright red or orange flowers. It blooms August through October, so while everything else in the garden is kind of sad and dormant, it's raging. And it attracts a ton of hummingbirds. They just love it like crazy. So it's really one of the things that carries the garden through the fall. So here's that same fuchsia plant once it's in flower.
So all of the plants that are in this garden are chosen to be adapted to the climate cycle of rain and dry. And so they are, once established, able to live here without supplementary irrigation during the dry season. And the California fuchsia really exemplifies the hardiness and the adaptability to our climate cycle, coming into that full spectacular bloom late in the season when most of the other plants here have gone into their seasonal dormancy.
So we've lived with our native garden now for 4 to 5 years, and the natives have really strengthened our connection with the garden in many ways. First, it's been a joy to learn more about the plants and to recognize them on hikes. Also, discovering the year-round beauty and by observing the flowering, fruiting, and dormancy cycles of each plant really make the garden something that we interact with kind of continuously throughout the year. And finally, last year, we didn't water the natives at all since they had been established at that point. So the grasses turned yellow in the summer, adding visual contrast, and also reminded us of the natural cycles. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the in-person tour on May 1st.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much. And so, Anne, again, I want to thank you for making that video. You really rose to the challenge. I'd also like to thank Jason Bull for doing the drone footage, and to Jonathan Reckless for popping in at the last minute and helping with a couple of technical things. So, all right. So let's see. So watering your natives, you didn't water this last year at all. Your garden is how old?
Yes, it's 4 or 5 years. So 2016, 17, something like that. So 4 or 5 generally. But we've been planting, and like we planted a whole bunch in the front this year. So, we've gone through different stages.
Yeah. So you water your new plants, but you don't water the mature parts of your garden.
Well, we've just been turning on the water. Actually, with this spring with no water, we've been turning on our watering system, but trying to be careful. Like we just turned it off with the rains we've gotten the last couple days. But.
Yeah. I want to say that our garden is 12 years old, and we moved out of our house for a year when it was being remodeled, and we didn't water at all for a year and a half, really, because we were so busy packing, and then we were gone, and then we came back and we were busy unpacking, and the garden really, a mature garden, it stood well, being completely abandoned. No watering, no weeding, no deadheading, no nothing for a year and a half, and it still did well. So I'm curious, roughly how tall are your oak and your toyon, and how old are they?
I think the one is maybe 15 feet that we talked about in the front, the one that it's 4, 5, 6 years. And then the toyon's about 6 feet tall. So it really grows fast, the toyon does.
So it didn't take long to get some tall trees in there for you. Okay, I know that's one question. I saw you have a lawn substitute. Do you want to tell us about that kind of bunch grass area that you have?
Oh, it's a sand sedge, I guess, Carex pansive. And they plant, and it's just filled in a lot. So when it was planted, it was just, I don't know, there was just not much planted, and then it's just whatever it is, it loves that place, and it's pretty much filled in, and we have to kind of keep it back from some of the other plants, or else it'll take over. So.
And does it require water? How's the maintenance, traffic? How do you like it?
Oh, I like it a lot. Yeah, no, it looks great just because it loves that location. So it's pretty happy. I mean, we don't walk over it like you would on grass or anything, but I like the look and everything. So.
If you'd like to see the plant list for Ann and Ed's garden, you can click on the agenda link, or you can go over to the online tour and you can look at their garden page, and you'll see the agenda and the grass that we just talked about. I want to thank for a moment the garden assistants who are online answering questions: Sandra Navala-Lee, Todd Guylands, Martha Griswold, Hope Salzer, and Robin Mitchell. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat and we'll try to get to them. So it sounds like you have color for a lot of the year in your garden because you have the fuchsia carrying you through the fall.
Right. And then in January, we start with some of the silk tassel and, and then the manzanita and the ceanothus and so forth. So it's pretty much all year round, which is just a lovely thing to sort of discover. Compared to the old style gardens where you're just used to everything blooms in the summer and then it's dormant in the winter. So,
and silk tassel is a beautiful plant, isn't it? With those interesting, catkins or whatever they are that hang down. Let's see, Stephanie, can you help me pull some questions from the chat? We have a little bit of extra time. Is there anything that you would want to tell us about your garden or your green home, since we have a little time to spare right now?
I can't think of anything in particular.
Well, there were some questions for the green home about the Tesla roof specifically, and some cost questions. So maybe in the Q&A and in the chat, if you guys want to, after this, answer a few specific questions.
Yeah.
One thing I was curious about, really
go to the Tesla. Oh, sorry. You can go to the Tesla website, and you can do a quote like real time or whatever. And so you can get a lot of information on the website.
And about, somebody just popped in about your fruit trees. There was also a question earlier. Do you let the leaf litter, because they're primarily deciduous, I think. So is that a source of mulch for you?
Yeah, we let it.
We do. We mulch under them to some extent, but you have to kind of rake back from contact with the trunk itself, or you can get bark diseases. And because we've got them on semi-dwarf stock, you have to be careful about where the graft is with regard to the dirt line, so that you don't cultivate something that's actually your root stock instead of the selected cultivar. We've been adding extra citrus because we have quite a number of them, but we've kind of got a sequential harvest of our various mandarins and things like that. And it's, kind of carries us through the winter. It's quite a morale builder, actually.
That's great.
Would you rattle off some of the fruit trees that you have? Because I know you have many interesting ones, and people will be interested.
Well, yeah, we got several apples, 3 or 4 different kinds of apples, Fuji apple, and a Cox Orange Pippin apple, and a Spitzberg apple, and I'm probably forgetting some of them. I think got 13 citrus, 2 lemons, a Meyer, and a Eureka, like 5 or 6 mandarins. So they the mandarins are fruiting from like November till we still gotta have a golden nugget now fruiting. So that's great for the winter. We've got a Tangelo. We've got 2 limes, a Barris lime and a Mexican lime. We've got several pears. We've got 2 camis, actually, pears, because we love them. And what's the other? Suckle pear. We've got a quince, Van Damian quince, and an apricot, and a gold mine nectarine. A couple figs, Violette de Bordeaux. I think, Kathy, we learned about them from your yard. They're great. We just planted a mulberry, so we'll see how that works out, a white Persian mulberry. And let's see, I think that and a couple of pomegranates as well.
And I
so
think
we're pretty much continuous throughout the year.
There was one native fruit, if you may call it that. I think you have a native grape. I have one too.
Yes, the monster. Yes.
And do you actually harvest those grapes as well?
Yes, we do. We do. It grows so prolifically that it actually covers the entire top of the back pergola by the end of the summer. It provides wonderful shade. It provides a lot of our compost, because to keep it under control, you have to keep trimming it or
like every day. Like
when it's going where you don't want it to. We've named it. We call it Seymour, after the Little Shop of Horrors, because it's quite something.
It's like beware if you get it, because it'll go out of control. But it's beautiful at the same time. So.
I have to say a cautionary note about the Rogers Red. So you guys are really on top of it, and as you said, you like prune it every day. When I see Rogers Red in people's gardens, because I go to visit every gardens on the tour, it kind of makes my blood run cold. So we put Rogers Red in the back of our yard, and then we took it out some years later because it had spread to 5 of our neighbors' yards and knocked down a fence. And a plum tree. Like it climbed up in the plum tree and made the tree so heavy that in a big rain, that was the kind of the death knell for that tree. So there's another grape that actually, the Rogers Red is a cross between the edible grape and our native grape. And you can buy our local species native grape, which has smaller leaves and it's not such a rampant grower. So for people who do want grape, who don't feel like you're going to be out pruning your Rogers Red every day, and especially if you're near any kind of open space or any kind of other large trees that you don't want it to just like climb up and, strangle, then you have to be really careful with Rogers Red.
Actually, on a hike, I think to Castle Crag, we saw an oak tree pulled over by a native grape. I mean, that had gone up the side of it and actually pulled the tree over. Mm-hmm. It was an astounding, Yeah,
ours took out our plum. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I mean, one thing I noticed, there are not that many super vigorous native vines. So the grape being one, I mean, say the native huckleberry is more like a scrambler through shrubbery and stuff. I have a native morning glory in full sun, blanking on the botanical name. But that is also an option. But yeah, the Rogers Red might be too vigorous for most yards.
Mm. I want to say too that I know that Ed and Ann are big composters, and people might be interested since they're in your yard. Do you want to talk a little bit about your composting systems?
Yes, we got I think they're called EnviroCycles. We got some closed bin composters when the local trash collection authority had a subsidized buy, and because we compost our kitchen scraps and because they're attractive to rodents, we start the composting cycle for those in the enclosed drum composters. So it's completely sealed in, and it's kind of rodent proof. So you can leave stuff in there long enough that it's no longer terribly attractive to rodents. And then at that point, it gets mixed in with the rest of the compost in the geobin composters, which I like because you can really control the volume. You can, unreel it and have a relatively large drum, or you can tighten it up and have a small one. So I've been able to move them around in my utility yard and kind of control the volume. Generally speaking, I probably rework the compost twice a year, like kind of a heavy, shovel and turn cycle. And especially in the fall, when, for instance, we trim off the grape, we'll have a tremendous volume of compost and so forth. And it all gets used. I mean, it all disappears back into the yard. We're not that stringent. When it comes to pernicious weeds, we use the green can and just get rid of them. I know that properly composted, they won't reproduce, but I am not doing enough intermediate processing by composting that I'm killing all the seeds. And in fact, we frequently are getting, volunteer squash from the garden reproducing through the compost. Is telling me that it's not reaching that critical temperature where it's, causing things to pre-germinate and die off. So I still use the green can for, spitweed, spurge, and some of the other, common offenders in the yard, and just get rid of those. But we still have lots and lots of volume going into the compost.
Well, and I was the happy beneficiary of some of your squash, so I know that you guys are great gardeners. So let me say that there's a lot going on at Ann and Ed's garden. You can visit it on Sunday, May the 1st. It's in Moraga. And Ann and Ed, will you stay on after and type in, answer some questions if people have them on Zoom and we haven't gotten to them? So I want to thank you for being with us today and sharing your garden and supporting the tour. It's just been really great to have met you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we're going to go on now, and let me do a screen share.
Look in this chat. Okay.
Oops, I'm already there. I'll have to close that.
Sure.
I'm already sharing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. All right. So if you're interested in green home features, the East Bay Green Home Tour is coming up. It's free, online, 2 days. It takes place on May 14th and 15th from 10 to 1. It's run by my friend and colleague, Amy Kaiser, who you might have seen yesterday on the tour. It's a brand new lineup of homes. Amy will be taking people through 12 homes in the East Bay that have heat pumps for heating and cooling the house, heat pumps for heating water, induction ranges, solar panels, and more. So I encourage you to register for the East Bay Green Home Tour. And the garden that we just saw was designed and installed by 4 Dimensions Landscape Company. And the landscaper that was there with Ann and Ed was my longtime friend and colleague, Michael Filgen. I just want to say, I think it's so important if you're interested in a native plant garden to get some advice from a designer who is enthusiastic about, knowledgeable about, interested in, and willing to plant California native plants. It takes a lot to figure out which plants have similar needs for water and light, and how big they're going to get when they're mature, and what kind of drainage they want, and what looks good together, and the rhythm and repetition and continuity that makes for a pleasant design. I know I designed my own garden multiple times and it just never looked good. And we finally got help from 4 Dimensions Landscape Company. So there is a list on the website, Find a Designers, and you can find many landscape designers there, but I'm going to talk now about 4 Dimensions for a moment. 4 Dimensions is an award-winning landscape design company whose motto is restoring the earth, one garden at a time, and whose goal it is to bring people and nature together. 4 Dimensions creates well-planned, carefully crafted environments that enrich both human and natural life. You can call on 4 Dimensions to design, build, or nurture your garden. You can reach them at 4dimensionslandscape.com or 510-893-1999. If you live in the Contra Costa Water District service area, you'll be pleased to know that you can receive a lawn removal rebate of $1 a square foot. The district also offers a fabulous landscape design assistance program to its customers. In the landscape design assistance program, customers can receive a free 2-hour consultation from a professional landscape designer, and they'll help you explore ideas and make recommendations on the layout, plants, and other features that may work for your front yard. I would be sure and ask them if you're interested in a native plant garden before you choose a landscape person from their list, that you ask if they are familiar with and enthusiastic about California native plants, if that's what you'd like to put in your garden. And if they're not, then find another one, because some of the people on their list have had a number of gardens on the garden tour. So these gardens received lawn removal rebates from the Contra Costa Water District. And both of the gardens that we'll be looking at now were designed by professionals in the district's landscape design assistance program. This first garden is Karen and Jeremy Amos's garden in Clayton. It was designed by Kelly Marshall of Kelly Marshall Garden Design. And you can visit the Amos's garden on Sunday, May the 1st. And the Amos's also recently had their backyard redone, and it's beautiful. This is Lauren Kindorf's garden in Clayton, and she also received a lawn removal rebate from the Contra Costa Water District. This garden was designed by Anna Wendorf, and Anna is also part of the Landscape Design Assistance Program. The Contra Costa Water District's Lawn to Garden Rebate Program provides rebates to qualified customers in Central and East Contra Costa County to replace their existing front lawns with native or other waterwise landscaping. The rebate is $1 per square foot, up to $1,000 for a single family residence, and up to $20,000 for commercial, homeowner associations, industrial, and institutional properties. You can visit ccwater.com to find out more. And maybe we can bring Ethan on, and I'll do an introduction to Ethan and the upcoming garden. Hi, Ethan, how are you?
Hi, Kathy. Good, how are you?
Good. So I want to say that Ethan Bodnar, who's the owner of PlantKind, designed this garden in Oakland with the owner, Amelia. And before I go into that, though, I want to say that this whole virtual tour thing was actually Ethan's idea. So in 2020, as the virus was approaching, and I was watching with alarm and wondering what to do with the in-person tour and the year's worth of work that had gone into putting it together, and finally decided that I should cancel it And I sent out an email canceling the tour. And Ethan, who I did not know, responded and said, I'm so sorry you had to cancel the tour. That must be really hard and disappointing. Have you ever thought of holding a virtual tour? And I thought, that's ridiculous. Of course, I've never thought of holding a virtual tour. But then both of us, Ethan and I, saw the virtual tour that the Theodore Payne Foundation ran in Southern California. It was like just about a week and a half after I'd canceled our tour. And when I saw it, I thought, that's what I want to do. And I called Ethan, who I had never met, and said, would you help me? And he helped me. So for the next 5 weeks, we worked together. We spent so much time with Stephanie also, and put on this like last minute, seat of the pants, unexpected virtual tour. And we did so much work, and I never even met Ethan until after it was well over. So I want to say, Ethan, I bow to you across my computer screen, and so should everybody who was watching this presentation today.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm so glad we were able to make it happen back then. And it's still going strong today, which is great.
A lot has come of it. All right, so Ethan owns Plant Kind. He designed this garden in Oakland with the owner, Amelia. The goal was to create a welcoming space for their family to enjoy and for their toddler to explore. Not Ethan and Amelia's toddler, but Amelia and her husband's toddler, I should say. In this video, Ethan goes into the design considerations such as light, and he features some of the plants they chose. And Ethan, is there anything that you'd like to say before we start the video?
No, but just to kind of add on to your story there, this was, so I've been designing gardens before this with some native plants, but this was, after the tour ended and, I met you and I saw Doug's talk. This was the very first garden where I was like, all natives. So this garden's kind of really a result of what I learned on the tour back in 2020.
Well, I'm so glad to have you as a convert. And I want to say also that Ethan also rose to the challenge, as a number of our hosts did this year, and made this video himself. Like, these people really worked so hard to learn how to use the software and, create a storyline and put it all together. And it was a Herculean effort, I know. So thank you, Ethan, for making your video. And let's go watch it now.
I would say this sounds obvious, but I always thought that people chose to have a native garden just because of water requirements, that they're sort of more environmentally friendly because they their needs are sort of aligned with that of the climate we live in, which is pretty arid at this point. I think I was less aware of the other benefit, which is that all of the native birds and insects and animals are also going to harmonize better with those plants. And so that was something I learned that I think is pretty cool and a really great reason to plant native plants. And in terms of weeding and pruning, we do prune once or twice. At the end of the summer, things were getting really, really long and lanky in some places, so pruned that. And in terms of weeding, we've been in the process of getting rid of our oxalis weeds. We don't have a weed barrier in the raised back part of our garden. I would say the number one activity we get up to outside has to do with cooking and eating. We are a family that loves to cook together, and when the weather is nice, I don't think there's much better than having an outdoor dinner together as a family. We do a lot of grilling. And my daughter loves water play. She's still pretty young, toddler, so she loves getting into the pool or the water table and splashing around. She loves the pea gravel we chose for the backyard in lieu of turf or grass. Has a lot of fun kind of putting the rocks into egg cartons or into the pool itself. So that's been fun to watch. And then she's really into smelling things. She's very interested in exploring her world through smells.
The bird bath provides just a bit of water for the local birds and other critters, a place for them to stop by and stay hydrated as they explore the garden. We used a smart outlet in the corner here for the string lights, and this makes it so you don't have to climb through the salvia bush each time to turn on and off the lights. And it's important, to keep your lights off when you're not using the space so it doesn't impact migrating birds overhead. And because the lights attract the very moths and butterflies that we are, supporting with the garden, and just leads to exhaustion or burning them out over time as they're drawn to the lights. We all need a place to rest and somewhere to call home, especially our native solitary bees, and they're really important to help pollinate the plants in the garden, and so having a little bee house or a bee hotel is a great addition to your garden.
We care for our garden in a pretty low-key way. So we, in the summer months and the drier months, try to water the garden about 2 or 3 times a week. We don't really water it very much, which was part of the reason we wanted to do mostly native plants. But in the wet months, we don't water it at all.
Doug Ptolemy's work is really a cornerstone or the keystone to our understanding of native plants, and seeing his talk on the garden tour a couple years ago is what led to me committing to only garden with native plants. In this book, he writes, "In other words, we're learning how to create landscapes that contribute to, rather than degrade from local ecosystem function. The necessary task of restoring this ecological function to the land lies mostly before us." With the Sun Surveyor app, we're able to get a sense of the patterns of the sun, especially throughout the seasons. We can set it to different days in the year and see the trajectory that the sun takes over the garden. We can also see what time of day neighboring structures or the house or other trees might block out the sun to get a sense of what the future garden might be like. For here, we had the oak tree in the neighbor's yard as well as the fence line in the house providing a bit of shade. And then on Calscape, we're able to see the light requirements of all of our native plants and get a sense of what will work well. Probably one of my most visited websites is our beloved Calscape resource that we have here. We're able to really get a sense of what plants exist in different ecosystems with the map view. We're trying to, kind of honor and appropriate nature in some ways and what we would find out in the wild or in the East Bay Hills. So for here, this is the currents, and we can see their size, their dormancy, sun, moisture. Summer irrigation is a great statistic, as well as growth rate on the Calscape website, and also just making sure that they're, commonly available in the nurseries and not something too funky. To get a sense of what the plants look like in the garden, we want to go to Google Photos, since Calscape is more botanical in nature. And then we have our plant list generated that we'll use to source the plants. When we're designing a garden, it's really putting a set of intentions in place for what it might look and feel like at some point in the future. And I love to co-design a space with the clients and kind of have them be active participants. And Amelia was great in this regard, and she had some visions for the space and, you know, how they wanted to use it and kind of live outside and cohabitate with the native plants. We explored a range of different options, potentially a native grassland, where to put the deck, and ultimately ended up expanding this rock wall area and positioning the deck within the garden so you really get immersed within the space. So instead of just looking or viewing the garden from the patio area, we have this sort of multi-purpose deck platform where you're able to enter and be in the garden. And so you can see that they have a tent kind of play fort on there, which is really fun. But at times, you know, you can have chairs or seating, roll out a yoga mat, and just be more, you know, hanging out with the plants. We do a quick site model just to get a sense of how everything works together. And we're able to create a couple new gardens. We have the crescent shaped garden by the grill there, and another kind of corner nook garden up against the house. We kept it open so that there's plenty of room for running around in the pea gravel and also kind of moving the table or furniture in a sort of modular way so that the space can adapt over time. And then the garden really started to take form and come together. We have the pea gravel as a permeable surface, so trying to stick away from concrete or, you know, too much hardscaping that isn't natural. And finally, we have the plants on site, which is really exciting. We're able to kind of make some edits and adjust spacing, think through how the plants are going to be situated in their final homes, different groupings focused on odd numbers, and different, a couple plants are one-off, so they're kind of more special focal points that are a nice sculptural moment here and there. As much as you can plan a garden, it's a really special moment when you finally have the plants on site and you can get a sense of what the garden's going to feel like. It's a really playful time, just making any last minute edits or getting the positioning just right. This was a pretty exciting process because Amelia and her family were down to get their hands dirty, and so they planted all the plants in the ground and got to have that connection with them and see how everybody was settling in. We missed the winter planting season, so this was installed in late April, but you can see it's still a bit of a rainy day. And at this point, I think they're all just excited to be in the ground and stretch out their legs and be outside of their 1-gallon pots that they've been in for so long. They loved frosty green and kind of grays for the foliage, and so of course the salvias are a wonderful choice for this. It was fun to nestle this one in the corner here so it kind of grows up and fills in that space. It also mirrors some of the lower ground cover salvias that we have in the rest of the garden. We also have the Muhlenbergia origens, the deer grass. It's a bunch grass. It's pretty easy to grow. On other projects, we've used it for bank stabilization on hillsides, but here it's just a nice short grass underneath the window, and you can see that it is flowering with these narrow pointed leaves. And of course, the California fuchsia, one of everybody's favorites. It's really spreading here through the rhizomes and kind of coming out of its winter dormancy. We've seen it spreading throughout the rest of the garden. Here we have the Baccharis pigeon point. This is the dwarf coyote bush. It's a really nice variety because it's on the shorter side, maybe 2 feet tall, and it's being used here as sort of an understory for a couple of the citrus trees in the garden. It's fire resistant, which is nice, and deer resistant if that is something you're thinking through. And then we've paired it with the California fescue, which you can see kind of has the purple shimmer with its flowers right now, which is pretty. That's also deer resistant if that's something you're thinking about. The coyote bush is nice here as well because it kind of blurs the boundary of the edging with the garden and bleeds over onto the pea gravel, just softening that line there. And it supports a ton of wildlife, so it's a really positive addition to the garden. We see it a lot when we're out hiking these days, so it's nice to bring the plants that we see out in nature also into the garden. Same with the fescues, you'd see those traditionally, as part of many plant communities, but especially around here in Oakland under oaks in the hills. These are the currants, and so they're a member of the gooseberry family, but these currants have no prickers, which is ideal here, especially with kids running around. They're pretty drought tolerant and hardy. We've been using them up against fences a lot lately, also in our own garden. And they're just kind of fast growing, so they make a great impact in the garden quickly. You would find them underneath oaks a lot, and so we thought about that with the neighbor's oak tree. The berries are a great food source for the birds, so that's another kind of thing in the plus column for the currants. With the blue-eyed grass, you really get the best of both worlds because we have this grass-like foliage texture along with the blue and purple flowers. They're flowering at this time of year, so late winter through spring, and then they'll kind of die back and get a bit funky as we move into the summer. The lilac verbenas are really a crowd pleaser, especially with the butterflies who love them. Here we're using them draping over the rock wall, and they're kind of, a mounding plant, this variety, and so they get to be about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. They're always blooming for the most part, more with the warmer weathers in the spring and the summer, but it's a steady constant in the garden. Outside of California and where I grew up, they were grown as annuals. So for a new garden like this one, they're really able to get things going and kind of kick off the garden with a bang due to their fast growth rate.
My favorite plants are the lilac verbena and the quail bush. I think one thing you learn when you plant a garden is not everything is going to like it where it's been planted. And I think accepting that trial and error is part of gardening has helped me a lot.
We have the creeping sage as a kind of ground cover salvia. This is used here to drape over the walls and kind of blur that boundary, just to soften the stone work a little bit. They're full sun, so they're, for the most part, they can do a little bit of light shade inland, which we get with some dappled shade with the oak. And they're just super steady grower, very resilient. They can kind of have a bit of a wild side, and they have this dense matting sort of growth habitat. The Arctostaphylos emerald carpet is off to a pretty slow start here, but slow and steady, which is common for a lot of our manzanitas. And they really like well-draining soil. So in nature, we would find the manzanitas on a hillside. This one is up against the edge of the rock wall, which is partly for that reason, for some good drainage, and then also aesthetically so that with time, over the years to come, it'll grow and drape over. We have a handful of them here in this garden. They can do well together in large groupings to kind of cover a large area, especially if it's on a little hillside that you're trying to cover with some greenery. And they do well with some part shade, especially inland here. The huckleberries are a great addition to the garden. We have them in a bit of shade here, and they provide a bit of that red foliage color, which occurs with the new growth. And that's not something we find a ton, so it's nice to have that element and that aesthetic available as part of the planting palette. And they're a great fruiting food source for wildlife. These are off to a bit of a slow start the first year, but seem to be picking up pace now, so excited to see what they do in the years to come. We have our California wild rose in the background here as a foundation plant, just kind of for fun and a one-off experiment. It's deciduous, so it's not always with us, but it's a great addition to the garden. And we have the fragrant pitcher sage, which the flowers are a really nice nectar source for the hummingbirds and the bees. They get a bit top heavy, so we've been cutting them back a little bit to help them to regrow, but they're kind of fun in how they drape and intersect with other plants in the garden.
We see a lot of hummingbirds in our backyard, which we love. I don't remember ever seeing quite so many, especially in the springtime. It's really, really fun. You almost kind of get used to it, but it's very special. I'm not so great with bird names, but I can say we have tons and tons of birds, and when you're outside, sometimes it seems like it's like a fake meditation soundtrack with just like beautiful birds chirping. We have a huge oak tree next door to us that we're lucky to enjoy but not have to take care of. That I think adds to that's like a really nice oasis for all of the local birds.
The alfalfa looper moth, the billow bed looper moth, the black-banded carpet, the carpet worm moth, the clover looper moth, Clark's Day sphinx moth, the common euphyllopica, the common ringlet, the coyote brush borer moth, the coyote brush gall moth, the double-banded carpet, the fall cankerworth moth, the fall webworm, the forest tent caterpillar, the Gabb's checker spot, the ellipson dart, the Lindsay skipper, the orange totric moth, the sandhill skipper, the sulfur moth, the white line sphinx. All may at current or at one time live here in this backyard, hosted by these native plants, making them the key foundation of our local ecosystem.
And there wasn't much garden to speak of when we started out. It was just, mostly dirt. And I sort of impulsively initiated this project during the pandemic when, we were at home all the time, and having a viable and delightful outdoor space was a huge privilege and something that I think all of us appreciate even more now than we did before. So I'm very happy with our decision to make it a really nice place to hang out. I think it's really important, and I'm very, very glad we made that investment.
Who planted this oak tree, and what was their vision then? What are the long-term effects of growing up as a toddler surrounded by native plants? What happens when all the neighbors start planting native gardens too? What types of interconnected wildlife habitats can we imagine? How many birds' lives will your garden touch over the next decade? What do you think this garden will feel like in the future?
Well, Ethan, that was just terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's see. When was this garden installed?
Yeah, it would have been installed
Roughly.
that's the fall. Yeah, the fall or late winter of 2021. Yeah, I guess early 2021.
So it's
had it's gone through a couple seasons.
it'd be like a year and a quarter old then, is that right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic for a new garden, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really grown in quick, which is always, always surprising, and people kind of concerned, when they're that blank slate, how quickly things are going to happen. So,
yeah, it looks great. So, and you took great advantage of that magnificent oak that's in the neighbor's yard.
Yeah, that was quite the blessing to have the oak there. And they did a bit of tree work on it before we installed the garden, just so there weren't any kind of falling branches on our 1 gallon plants.
That's good. And then there's no irrigation system installed in this garden. They hand water, is that right?
Yeah, they hand water, and that was kind of a conversation we had with Amelia when we were designing the garden, and it kind of just becomes more of a cost thing as you save a couple $1,000s by doing that, but then also just you can hang out with the plants, and there's always that common question of like how long is it going to take to water a garden, and they have a smallish backyard, so it's a cup of coffee and a little podcast, and you're good to go. So
I love that you talk about the dark skies at night. So that was something that Ethan and I both heard about from Doug Tallamy, is the importance of turning off your exterior lights at night, using motion sensors instead of leaving lights on all night long. And then there are these lights that you can purchase that are certified by the Dark Skies at Night group, and you can get them from Home Depot. And the thinking behind Dark Skies at Night is that migrating birds get thrown off course by all of our city lights, and moths batter themselves to death on our exterior lights. So we bought Dark Skies at Night's approved lights, and it just means they have a cap across the top that keeps the light pointing down and not shining up. So thank you for mentioning that in this talk.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really important. Trying, even a couple of clients recently have like brought that up themselves. So I think the word is getting out there.
Mm-hmm. One resource I'd like to mention is the Las Politas website. I often go to Las Politas for information about plants and good photographs and growing information. And I know you use Calscape to help you pull your plant list together.
Yeah. Calscape is, it really has like data that I like to see, and just able to kind of skim it and see everything, the hierarchy and how it works together. But Las Politas and the Cal Flora Nurseries website kind of, their descriptions are a bit more painterly and kind of get into more of, some other sides of the plants as well that Calscape doesn't get across.
Yeah. And I loved your local moth roll call that you had. That was really fun. And I'm guessing that you might have found that information on Calscape. Is that right?
Yeah, that was all in Calscape. So I basically had the list of plants for this garden, and then you can see which moths and butterflies that they support.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you could also use Calscape in reverse. So once you find a moth or a butterfly that you're particularly interested, you can see what plants it needs. So that's a nice way to be able to look both ways at what your garden will provide, and then thinking like, what do you want to do for local lepidopterans? If you'd like to read more about this garden, you can look at the online, you can look at the list of View These Gardens is where it is on the 2022 tour. But this one's a little tricky. This is the only garden I think that's up there that you actually cannot visit this year. But you can read about it, and you can find the plant list there. If you'd like to contact Ethan, you can look under Find a Designer on the website, the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour website, and you'll find him under Plant Kind. And your website is plantkind.co. Am I right remembering that?
Yes, yeah, .co or .earth if you want to have a little fun with the .com was taken. So just in Google.
Well, that was a lovely garden. You did a great job with the video, and it was just so nice to see what you've produced, Ethan, and hope to have more of your gardens on the tour in the future.
Yeah, already scheming for next year. So it was really fun to put that story together, and thanks for sharing it.
Sure, and thank you again for making that video. It was fun.
Great.
Okay, we're going to go on now. Bye, Ethan. Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll go on now to the Watershed Nursery, which is located in Point Richmond. Owners Laura Hansen and Diana Benner and their team grow hundreds of species of California native plants. The Watershed Nursery is open Tuesday through Sunday from 10 to 4. You can shop in person in their large outdoor nursery, or you can place an order for curbside pickup. You can reach them at thewatershednursery.com. And let's hear a brief word from owner Diana Benner.
One moment, please. There we go.
Greetings from the Watershed Nursery, a native plant nursery in Richmond, California. We have been providing healthy native plant material for local habitat restoration projects and private gardens for over 20 years. We specialize in source-identified plants grown 100% in-house using the top best management practices. With new species hitting our shelves every week, we have an abundance of plants to choose from. We hope you come visit us soon.
Okay. Oh dear, can you help me? I just lost my, I think I need to share screen. Okay. Okay, hold on just a second. I just clicked the wrong button, I think.
While Kathy's figuring out the next video, I just wanted to chime in. Linda threw out a few nice suggestions for bird baths. You saw Ethan had a bird bath. It's a really good idea to make something quite shallow, have rocks where birds can land, and somebody had commented on cats. So it's if that's a problem that neighborhood cats come into your yard, mine do, have it somewhere higher up so they're protected, or in a good spot. Maybe you have a big shrub next to it where birds can seek shelter. That was my pitch on bird baths, and now back to Kathy. Kathy, you have to unmute.
Okay, so my husband just rescued me. Thank God he's here. Okay, so we're gonna go on now. Mike, can you help me? I'm on the first slide, but I'm really well into the presentation. So what I'm going to be talking about once we have gotten a little more organized here is a preview of the gardens on the upcoming tour that you can see on Sunday, May 1st. So let me just find my place in the slideshow, go a little bit more. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button, and right here, right there, right there. Okay, there, excellent. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, dear husband. So let me tell you that you can go to the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tours website and look under View the 2022 Gardens. Thank you very much, Mike. And you'll see this screen. The Bayside Cities gardens are on the left. There's about 35. They're open on Saturday, April 30th. The inland cities are on the right. About 15 gardens are open on Sunday, May the 1st. So this is a highlight of some of those gardens. There are 3 Clayton gardens on the tour this year. They're all just a few minutes away from each other. So if you go out there, you can see all 3 of them in short order. This is Karen and Jeremy Amos's garden. Their garden was designed by Kelly Marshall from Kelly Marshall Garden Design. The front garden was installed in 2010, and the back garden was just recently redesigned. The Amoses received a rebate from the Contra Costa Water District's Lawn to Garden program, which helped fund the project. And I'm sure that they also received the free design help from the Contra Costa Water District's Landscape Design Assistance Program. And this is the Amos's back garden. They recently took out a very large pool. They also have a, let's see, they said that their water bill was cut in half when the lawns were removed and replaced with natives. I'm sure their water use has dropped even more with the pool gone. And they also have solar panels. They're happy to talk with you about their solar panels. And Karen said that they hardly have any electric bill at all these days. And this is the Amos's front garden. This is the home garden of Kelly Marshall and her husband, Mike Widener, also in Clayton. Kelly is the owner of Kelly Marshall Garden Design. When the lawns were removed, Kelly's goal was to design a mostly native plant garden that would be attractive and interesting each season, despite Clayton's hot summers and cold winters. This is the back garden, and 40 species of birds and a plethora of butterflies and bees are drawn to this garden by the sound of splashing water, the bog, and the diversity of native seed, berry, and pollen-bearing plants. When the back lawn was removed, bluebirds began nesting in the garden. And butterflies began laying their eggs in it. So these photos were taken in Kelly's garden, and on the left is a newly hatched checker spot butterfly. At the top right is a monarch caterpillar, a narrow leaf milkweed, that's our local milkweed. And on the bottom right are checker spot caterpillars on a California bee plant, which the bee plant is one of my favorites. It's in flower in my backyard right now, and I just love that plant. So Nancy Niemeyer's garden puts to rest the idea that native plant gardens are not colorful. Nancy is passionate about both nature and archaeology, and these interests intertwined in the development of the garden that she designed and installed, which is modeled on ancient Roman gardens. And this is just one of the most interesting and different gardens that I have seen in all the years I've been running the tour. This is a rectangular courtyard that is planted with a riot of colorful native plants. It has this beautiful art piece of the sculpture of the lady with the flowing robes and the thick wavy hair, and the black on white geometric patterned mosaic, which was designed and created by Nancy, was modeled after similar mosaics that were seen in ancient Roman gardens, only she has our local wildlife here instead of other wildlife. This has a fountain and pedestals that both frame the garden beds and function as seats. It's so artistic and also just so beautiful. And native bees, ladybugs, butterflies, finches, and quail have been seen in the garden. Rock piles provide homes for fence and alligator lizards. This is Dan and Lisa Wanket's garden in Concord. Both the front and back gardens contain a waterfall, a stream, and a shallow pond, which birds love to bathe in, and Dan and Lisa love to relax by. Dan tells us he's also waiting for wolves to return. I think that was one of his goals in putting all the water into his garden. This was once just like a huge expanse of like pebbles, I think, and palm trees is what was out here before. Kelly Marshall designed Dan and Lisa's garden, which contains numerous keystone species, such as 3 types of manzanitas, 3 types of buckwheats, 3 types of sages, and California lilac, lupins, currants, and penstemon. So on the right here is, I think it's lupin, I want to say. On the left here is seaside daisy. Here's some penstemon, and here's some aquatic monkey flower, I think. So this is Anne Chambers and Ed McAlpine's garden in Moraga, the garden that has something for everyone. If you're joining us late, we'll be just showing a few pictures, and others of you have seen this already. This beautiful native plant garden was installed by 4 Dimensions Landscape Company. In addition to a waterfall and pond, this garden also has 30 fruit trees and an impressive composting system. On the green home front, Ann and Ed have also installed a Tesla solar roof and 2 lithium Tesla Powerwall batteries. Their stove is induction, and you're welcome to step inside the kitchen to see the induction stove in action, ask questions about it, and taste a delicious recipe from the new climate-friendly cookbook, which will be available for sale at this garden. This is Al and Barbara Kyte's garden in Moraga. This 50-year-old native plant garden has been on the tour every year since 2007, and it's really now more beautiful than ever. If you haven't seen this garden, you shouldn't miss it. And if you've already visited, it's worth a return stop. The front garden contains a dry stream bed and numerous mature manzanitas. In the back garden, a 25-foot long stream tumbles down through offset falls, a meander and a shallow riffle, and a bird beach area before spilling into a fish and turtle pond. This spectacular garden contains over 170 species of California natives. Most of the established plants receive no summer water. Over 90 species of birds, including thrashers, tanagers, and black-throated gray warblers, and 18 species of native bees have been seen in the garden. We're now at Bob and Stephanie Sorensen's garden in Orinda. This 30-year-old restoration project and garden is a showstopper, and it's a must-see for anyone who is interested in restoring the ecology of your own yard. It contains about 150 species of locally native plants, many of them purchased from Native Here Nursery in Berkeley. Recently, the large back lawn was removed and replaced with natives. So this is the chance to see both a mature and also a new garden. And this is leading down the hill and going across the creek. From 10 to 4 on Sunday, May 1st, birders Michael Strom and Karen Sorensen will have a spotting scope set up, and they'll be available to answer your bird questions. They will not be standing on a lawn this year. They'll be standing in a newly planted garden. Bob has great lists of birds, reptiles, amphibians, mammals that he's seen in the garden. His plant list and his wildlife list and his weed list are terrific, and they're up on his garden page if you'd like to see them. Bob also made a terrific video on his garden last year, which is up on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel if you'd care to see it. So Bob, along with Glenn Schneider, our other longtime host in Berkeley, is one of the brains and a lot of the brawn behind the amazing Skyline Gardens Restoration Project, which is located near the Tilden steam train in Berkeley. And in this project, twice a week, volunteers tend the wild, weeding out invasive plants so the natives can return. I was out there about 6 weeks ago. I've been out there a few times over the years, not as often as I would like. It's so beautiful. And about 6 weeks ago when I was there, I saw Noah Miller, who we saw yesterday, and Glenn took me on a tour. And this is what I saw when I went out some years ago. The paths were just lined with this nasty thistle. And volunteers have been out cutting down the thistle, preventing it from going to seed, weeding out other non-natives. And when they have removed the non-natives and just allowed space for the natives, they have returned. So this past spring, this is what the area looked like with columbine on the left and lupin on the right. Nearly 200 species of native plants have been seen in this project area, which is about just 1.25 miles long. And this is what they do. People were just chatting and weeding and removing non-natives. And it was just so massively fun to be there. If you would like to make new friends, get some exercise, learn more about our local native plants and do some good for the world, and particularly if you can commit, because they need people who can learn what they're doing and they know that they're going to come, then you can contact them at the Skyline Gardens .org website. Here we go. Skyline Gardens, it should be Gardens, skylines.org, and leave them a note. or you can ask Bob how to get involved when you visit his garden. And when I was there about 6 weeks ago, this is pretty much what it looked like on the left. And these are mule's ears on the right. They're in flower now. And I also have mule's ears in flower in my own garden in San Pablo at this moment. This is Gaston and Ariane Habit's garden in Pleasant Hill. And their beautiful back garden was installed in 2012. It was such a successful project that in 2014, the Habits sheet mulched their front lawn away. This garden was designed by Liz Simpson of Liz Simpson Garden Design. Sadly, she has moved. It's Seattle's gain and our loss. Among the plethora of inviting and functional features in this expansive back garden are this beautiful seating area and a drilled rock fountain, breakfast nook, custom-made stone benches, and a hidden petanque court. A 500-gallon rainwater catchment is used to water some of the vegetables. The Habits have solar panels, and their electric bill is nearly zero because they also produce more energy than they use. You can feel free to ask them about their panels. So we'll go on now. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that on average, each American uses over 4 pounds of pesticides a year. A few things to know about pesticides. Pesticides put the health of our children and our pets at risk. Children are especially sensitive to toxic chemicals because children are small and they play in the garden. Studies have found increased health risks among families that use lawn and garden pesticides, especially among children and pets. And just so you know, no pesticides are used in any garden on the virtual or in-person tour. So it's not hard if you put the right plants in to have a garden where you don't even want to use any pesticides. Let's go now and watch the video from the Alameda County Clean Water Program.
What a beautiful day.
There you are. Geez, you're far from the creek.
No, it's closer than you think. I'm just taking a little me time.
Aren't these gardens full of weed killer, bug spray, and other scary stuff?
Nope, this is a pesticide-free garden.
I've got kids and pets to protect.
That means no chemicals will get washed into the storm drain.
Which means no pollution in the creek or the bay. And keeping good bugs alive is good for the garden and good for my belly. Excellent food, sir. Mwah.
As a fun fact about that video, it was filmed in Stephanie's backyard.
That's right. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for that pitch for a clean water program.
You're welcome. All right, so we're going to go on now to, let me just advance one to hear a presentation on pruning manzanitas by Pete Veilleux. So it's my pleasure now to introduce my friend and native plant garden designer, Pete Veilleux, owner of East Bay Wilds. Pete has his hand in every aspect of native plant gardens, from giving consultations to garden design and maintenance. And as if that isn't enough already to drive a person to drink, he also owns the popular native plant nursery East Bay Wilds, which is located in the Fruitvale district of Oakland. So Pete will be talking today about how to prune manzanitas. He'll be in the garden of Natalie and Armand, which is in Alameda. And before we start this video, I would like to call all blessings down upon the head of Maurice Phillips, who adopted Pete's video project late in the day and agreed to finish off the video that Pete had begun. And she has been working tirelessly on this video for some days now, and we really appreciate her efforts. So let's go now and meet Pete.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Pete. Is there anything you'd like to say before we watch the video?
Oh, I'm enjoying the presentation so far quite a bit. It's great. I love seeing the other gardens too.
I'm glad. All right. Well, let's go look at the video.
Welcome to the video Pruning Manzanitas by Pete Veilleux of East Bay Wilds. This video is for the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour, and I'm talking about manzanitas, one of my favorite subjects. Manzanitas are iconic plants of California. Manzanitas are usually shrubs of all different sizes. There's plenty of diversity. They can be just a couple of inches tall and form these large mats or carpets, or they can become these enormous trees up to 36 feet tall. The largest one I found was about 20 years ago on Cedar Mountain near Livermore, and it was 36 feet tall and the trunk was 6 feet around. Huge. They grow throughout the state of California, and in California there are almost 200 species. So this is their cradle of evolution here. And they're known for their beautiful red bark, and it can be smooth or shaggy, and their stems can be thick or thin, and usually with age they do thicken in general. But some of them always have fairly thin branches, and others have really thick and chunky branches. The big berry is one of my favorites. They have very white leaves, very glaucous leaves, but their leaves can be all different textures, and they change color and texture as they grow. So they can go from, in just a matter of a week or so, they can go from a real chartreuse green to a very white glaucous, which is pretty cool. What's interesting is that at one time, many millions of years ago, they pretty much covered California, but then the climate changed and they ended up retreating to ridge tops around the state. They're found on these isolated ridge tops throughout the whole state, and the isolation of those ridge tops is what caused them to diverge into many different species. Some of them are burrow formers, and they form a big burrow. Sometimes it's in the ground and sometimes it's above the ground. Others don't have burrows. They're both two different strategies for survival in fire. As you all know, fire is an important part of the California ecology. And the burrow formers, when they burn down to the burrow, and then the burrow resprouts fairly quickly and grows fairly quickly. While the non-burrow formers, their seed germinates after fire. You get a gazillion of them popping up in like carpets all over the burned areas. They do support an enormous amount of wildlife. Literally thousands of critters depend upon manzanitas for their livelihood, either for their home, their food. The manzanitas are why we have hummingbirds throughout the winter in California, because in general they flower during the winter. The red admiral butterfly is dependent on the manzanitas. It's a beautiful butterfly, and they often show up in February. Most people are looking for help pruning large manzanitas, the large ones. Everybody wants a tree size or a tree type manzanita is what people say to me all the time. But, in truth, they all start as shrubs, and then they grow into trees over time, given the right conditions and the correct pruning too. So be sure to care for your manzanitas properly and do a little research on how to care for them and prune them. They have very specific watering requirements, and they need to be on the dry side, especially once they're established. Now, there's a few rules that I like to follow when pruning manzanitas. There's about 20 of them that I follow. I'm going ahead and breaking these rules because I need to be pruning now in order to show people how to prune. I've only been doing this work for about 20 years. So the oldest manzanita that I've seen is 20 years old, that I've been working on for 20 years. And some of those are starting to get their shape and their form, their mature form, but some of them are still in the vigorous youth growth at that point. So it takes a long time to see the results of your work. One of them is wait 3 to 5 years before first pruning them, and be patient with them. Allow them to grow. The slower they are, the more beautiful they'll be. Just keep that in mind. And sometimes we're growing for our grandchildren rather than for our own pleasure. Another of the rules to consider is when to prune. And it's generally suggested to prune when the weather is very dry and sunny, usually in summer. And you're plenty past the flowering. And do not prune when the manzanita is flowering or about to flower. Have the right tools together. And the right tools are pruning shears are the most important one, for me anyway, but also loppers for slightly larger branches and pruning saw for the much larger branches. And another very, very important rule is to clean your tools thoroughly. And before you make a single cut, you need to clean them very carefully I use alcohol and a rag, but they do really need to be very clean because there's a lot of different pathogens that you can spread from one manzanita to another, and even in the same manzanita, you can spread it from one branch to another. You don't want to be stretching or pulling or twisting the manzanitas ever, because I've seen that just one twist with the loppers in particular can kill a manzanita. It will split the trunk open, and once the trunk has been open like that, all the pathogens get in and you're in trouble. Whenever I make a fairly large cut, really anything over half an inch or an inch, I'll use a pruning gel, and it's a bonsai pruning gel, and it's a gel just to cover over the little where I've cut, and it helps prevent pathogens from getting in. You can get it online at bonsai supply places. It's quite expensive, very expensive actually, but it lasts a long time for me because I don't prune a whole lot of large branches either on manzanitas. And another really important thing to remember is make as few cuts as possible. Think about every cut before you make it, okay? And think about what you're doing and what the results are going to be. Don't try to impose too much of your own idea of what there should look like onto them, but sort of bring out their own natural look. That's why I like to leave the eccentrics, some branches that are just sort of go wildly off in another direction. It gives them their own character, and it actually becomes a very beautiful part of the manzanita over time. In general, what I do is remove any branches that are in my way, in the path, that are coming into the path or into a driveway or whatever. I just remove those branches right back to the next trunk or the next intersection where two trunks meet or branches meet. I first bring it back there, and sometimes I'll decide to bring it back further, so I bring it back closer to the inner trunks. Okay, another rule that I try to keep in mind always is I don't want to force a particular shape or size onto the manzanita. Landscapers who really don't know about manzanitas, or even homeowners that don't understand them or know much about them, they just prune them all into lollipops. I've seen it so many times, and they usually die within a year or two of that. Maybe of shame, I don't know. But please don't do that. It can totally ruin a garden. So treat each one, manzanita, uniquely. Don't try to cut each one the same, because everyone is pretty unique.
This is one of the little gardens that we've done. This is in Alameda. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different manzanitas in this little front yard, which is typical of the gardens that we do. There's 2 sunsets and a Big Sur, and then a Pajaro manzanita, and that's a Austin Griffiths here in the front. These 2 we pruned not that long ago. Here's one, which was pruned about 3 weeks ago. You see this one, how we opened up the base. It's nice and open. And this one also we did. This is a sunset manzanita. And see how it has a really long lower branch that goes along the ground there and then comes back up. We call those branches that are unusual like that eccentrics. And I try to leave some on each manzanita in order to allow it to get its own form, its own shape, rather than us doing all the shaping on it. So here's this is another sunset here that has not been pruned yet, and I think we're going to prune this one because it's very hardy. You're not supposed to prune when it's wet out. And those tall trees there, those are desert willows. And the rest of the garden, you can see, is coming along nicely. We also did the driveway here and the backyard. This is the gate to the backyard. The Dutchman's pipeline here, which has grown like crazy since we put it in about 5 years ago. This is a red twig dogwood and a yellow twig dogwood growing together, the Cornus sericea. I really like these plants a lot. They don't take much water at all. This one gets water, a little bit of water every couple weeks, and that's it. But it stays beautiful all summer long. It prunes very nicely, and it fills this spot really nicely and looks good year round with the red and yellow twigs in the wintertime and then the beautiful leaves and flowers and berries in the summer. Okay, so this one is done. And you can see there wasn't really a whole lot of cuts that we made. Underneath we made a few. This is the first pruning that this one has ever had. But we pruned it. You can see the rocks better now. You can see the trunk a little bit. And it's got a nice shape to it. But I didn't bring the branches up too much. It's fine the way it is. So, yeah, I think that's good. Here's a picture with me and Lucy. Lucy's my partner of 16 years. I sell California native plants and lots of tchotchkes and different garden antiques and things that I find around. And we're open every Friday from 9:30 to 4, and you are welcome to come see us. Our landscapes, there's quite a few photos of them online. We're pretty busy these days, so it's kind of a long waiting list. Please be in touch if you have any comments or questions. Thank you very much.
Pete, that was just great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's see. I have a few. Well, before I forget, I want to thank Robin Hayden for doing the videoing of this at the garden in Alameda. It was great of her to rally and come and video at the last minute. I want to say also that Pete gave a presentation last year on gardening with manzanitas, on water and light and size. So if you'd like to learn more about the specific of using manzanitas in your garden, you can go to the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel and find that manzanita presentation. So let's see. Is it necessary, Pete, to prune a manzanita, or is it only an option? Like if you really, is it okay to ever leave them alone, or do you want to do some pruning after a few years?
In the wild, they do get pruned. In the wild, they get pruned by the conditions that are around them and by deer and other foraging things, and wind and storms and stuff. They do really shape the manzanitas. In the garden, they tend to just grow as these big green balls until you prune them, and then the real beauty comes out in them at that time, in my opinion. But you do have to be careful and do it correctly. And until you prune them, they're really kind of just big green blobs in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that if you can prevent branches from being like brushed against, and by removing them, I think you're doing the plant a big favor too, because manzanitas don't like to be like manhandled a lot.
Being brushed against by our bodies as we're walking.
Yeah, like if they're right against a path, we want to remove the branches entirely, and that actually shows. It allows us to see the structure and the bark, and at the same time, it prevents the problems that you get when you're brushing up against them all the time.
The garden that we were in was Armand and Natalie's garden, which Pete designed, and it is a beautiful garden. It's not on the tour this year, but we hope to have it back again one day when the pandemic is over. I wonder, Pete, if you could, this is not a pruning question, but there's been a lot of discussion lately about street trees and what are good street trees. And I've been wondering if some of the taller manzanitas couldn't be used as street trees.
Yeah, I've seen them used as street trees, and some of the larger ones like Dr. Hurd and the Big Berry manzanita, and they're beautiful. They're gorgeous.
So Dr. Hurd and Big Berry would be the ones that you think would be good.
Austin Griffiths too. Austin Griffiths is very easy, and accepts many different conditions. There's some other two large ones, but I've seen small ones used in the strips as well, and just fine. The Uva ursis, the Kinnick. Those are really.
Speak up a little bit, Pete. Maybe a little closer to your
sure.
computer.
There's a lot of even the shorter manzanitas I've seen used, and I've used them in sidewalk strips. The Kinnicks and the Edmundsiais, as well as the really big ones.
I was thinking of it because in one of your pictures, a manzanita looked really as tall as the roof, or was I just imagining that? I mean,
it is. They get up to 20 feet tall fairly, some of them fairly within just a few years. So
why don't you tell us about your Flickr site and where people could find it? Because I know you have so many great pictures. Like they can link to it from your website, can they?
Yes, and also can I have the guidelines rather than rules. The guidelines that I've put together, if those can be made available, I'm not quite sure how, but maybe we can do that somehow. I have them here, so.
Okay, I'll think, because I'm sure that people would like them, and I'll have to think about where to put them, but I'm gonna think.
For sure, the video will be posted, so it's actually really nice to see how you're actually demoing the different rules. So YouTube channel, Bringing Back the Natives, Pete's previous video on gardening with manzanitas, and this one will be on the channel.
Stephanie, would it be possible to take the guidelines that Pete just mentioned and put the link to them inside, in his description when this video goes up on the YouTube channel, so that
that's a good idea too. Yeah, we could just list them in the description. I mean, there's not that many. Pete, you said you had like 20, but I think the ones in the video were fewer.
Yeah, but there's about 20 though that I really think are good ones to read before starting.
Yeah. Can I ask a question that's also not totally about pruning, but we had something in the chat about, the different names and the hybrids, and are they cultivars? Are they how much are they hybrids? What's maybe a manzanita that's the closest to what you would see in nature? I'm always confused about that. Can you talk about that?
Actually hybridized, if they do hybridize on their own, manzanitas. If they're within proximity of one another, you will get hybrids probably, especially if they hybridize easily within certain groups, but they also hybridize occasionally across different groups of manzanitas. And but so those are natural hybrids. But then also there's a couple of them that are actually really hybrids. Like Sunset is one that was developed for the garden through hybridizing. So whereas the selections are all wild plants that have been selected for, their ability to adapt to garden conditions or size, shape, color.
So when you said earlier, you were giving us a few ideas for the street trees, and you said Austin Griffith, and you said, oh, that's an easier one. So is that a cultivar that was sort of bred, if you will, because it's easier, hardier?
Actually, I think it was a natural hybrid, but from a nursery. So it's a cross between Arctostaphylus manzanita and maybe Dr. Hurd. So yeah, it's a really easy one for people to start with, though, because it's so adaptable, and it does get large.
And the manzanitas come in everything from prostrate forms to like the 20-foot tall species. So you carry, I know, a lot of manzanitas at East Bay Wilds. So how many kinds of manzanitas do you carry there?
We've had about 77 different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
That's our latest count.
So East Bay Wilds is open on Fridays. It's also open occasionally through the native plant extravaganzas. And on Saturday, April the 23rd, East Bay Wilds will be open from 10 to 4. So if you'd like to meet with Pete or do some shopping at East Bay Wilds and you're only available on the weekends, that would be a good time to go there. Can I ask you, Pete, about the Dutchman's pipevine that we saw? It was fantastic. I know it's often very slow to grow, but that one just looked...
It's about 5 or 6 years old, and it's 50 feet long.
Huh.
It's done really well. 50 feet long and then about 4 feet tall. So.
Have they gotten the caterpillar and butterflies there?
I'm not sure, but we've had ours in the ground at the nursery, which is also super vigorous. And we already got the butterflies this year, and it's only been in the ground for 2 years. So we get the butterflies and the caterpillars.
How exciting. So the butterfly that we're talking about is the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. It relies upon just one plant that it can lay its eggs on, and that is the Dutchman's pipevine. And so people who have Dutchman's pipevine are always very eagerly watching to see if they get this butterfly, which is a very large butterfly. It's like 3 inches big, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
a really
black,
beautiful, deep blue one, black.
Yeah.
And it's it's also called California pipevine.
California pipevine.
That's probably more common.
More common. Sorry about that. All right. So I had a viewing of Lucy there waddling around in your video. She's very cute still. So, so is there anything else, Pete, you want to say before we move on?
One other reason for pruning with manzanitas is that we use, quite a few, and that's a small space there. So in order to make and I have several examples that were not shown yet on this video, but that shows how pruning makes the garden much more usable for people. It opens up the paths, it guides people, it pulls people into the garden really well. But pruning is really what's key to making it work, in my opinion.
Well, manzanitas are certainly some of our most beautiful plants, and they flower early, so they offer hummingbirds and bees nectar, a source when there's not much otherwise available. I know some bees are specialized even to go to manzanitas, aren't they? Does anybody know about the bees that like specifically rely on manzanitas coming out in December and January?
I don't know their names, but there are several that really depend on them a lot. So. And there's a special the way that they fertilize them is pretty interesting too. They do this.
Right, it's a buzz fertilization. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, let me say that you can reach Pete. His email is pete@eastbaywilds.com. His number is 409-5858. You can see Pete in person next Friday, the 22nd, when the nursery is open, or on Saturday, the 23rd, when it's open, particularly for the extravaganza. So Pete is my longtime friend and colleague, and it's always nice working with you. And I want to thank you for joining us today, Pete.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Can you stay with us and answer some questions online?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go on now. To Atmos. So I think we have Robbie Mickelson with us.
Yes,
hi, Robbie.
Kathy.
How are you?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Nice to see you again today.
Likewise, happy Sunday, happy Easter. We celebrate.
Robbie came over last night to drop off some materials That'll be at the tour. We didn't like knock back a beer because I don't drink beer, but we did wander around the house and talk about heat pumps and solar panels. So it was nice to meet you in person.
Likewise.
So recently, my husband Mike and I found Atmos Financial online, and Mike and I were intrigued to see that Atmos's motto is "Changing your bank can help fight climate change." Can you explain what Atmos is, Ravi?
Yes, thanks, Kathy. And thanks you and Mike for opening accounts with us. So what people don't understand is that banks use our money to fund whatever they want. And the biggest banks, as you can see here, since the Paris Climate Accords, have continued to fund to the orders of more than $1 trillion, extreme fossil fuel extraction. This has been in the Arctic drilling, the Canadian tar sands, coal plants, etc. And what Atmos is we're a digital bank. So we're a software startup, and we partner with regulated banks. So we offer FDIC insured savings and checking accounts. And we only use that money for climate positive activities like funding solar panels, heat pumps, and soon, no home loans just yet, but those are coming probably next year to Kathy in the question. And also regenerative agriculture. And we want to help provide funding. And right away, we are giving 5% cash back on all of the the nurseries that are on the tour website, the garden tour website. So if you go there and you use your Atmos debit card, we will give you 5% cashback rewards for shopping there versus one of the big box nurseries.
All right. Well, Atmos has a terrific video. Why don't we go and watch that, and then we'll come back and ask some more questions of Ravi.
Sounds good.
Where you bank matters. Every day, your bank makes choices about how to spend your money. Those choices probably aren't the same that you'd make, like putting your money toward loans for fossil fuels, factory farming, or fast fashion. Without even realizing it, your money is funding climate change. Atmos was created to provide each of us with a vote for what our money funds, because we believe that your money can and should create the changes you want to see, helping us move towards a cleaner environment and a fair and transformed economy. Where you choose to bank may seem like a small decision, but it matters.
Well, I've watched that video a number of times, and I love it really, because when Mike and I saw it, well, we'd never thought about what our money was doing when it was in our banks. And when we realized that our money could be used to be funding anti-good climate activities, we were just horrified, really. And we loved the idea that our funds could be deposited in Atmos and be used to fund solar power and wind energy and things that we believe in.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. And just like every 100th of a degree of warming that we stop matters with climate change. Every dollar and 1/10 of a dollar that we move away from funding fossil fuels gets us to that goal. So thank you.
Well, and we also love the idea, as it said in the video, that like when we're sleeping or whatever we're doing, like our money is working for good. I wanted to say that Mike and I have opened an account with Atmos. We hope that you will too. You'll find a link for Atmos at bringingbackthenatives.net. If you use that link, when you open your account, Atmos will make a donation to the tour. And Ravi, are you able to stay with us on Zoom and answer some questions online?
I am, and I also dropped that link and my email into the chat. And yes, Hope, we're based in Berkeley, and our team is mostly scattered throughout the Bay, and then we have a few additional people around the country.
It was exciting to us to realize that even though you are a national organization, that you actually are based here in Berkeley. We were very excited to realize that.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to be here, and this is really the hub and the point of the spear driving change forward. So thank you for having me, and I will be in the chat. to answer questions, and we'll respond via email if somebody has a question later too.
Thank you so much, and thanks for starting Atmos. It's a great idea.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye, everyone.
And actually, I forgot again to move to this second screen, but we'll just say that 100% of Atmos's deposits are invested in positive climate activities. They give 5% cash back if you have an Atmos debit card, and the native plant nurseries are all listed as companies that if you shop there, you'll receive a 5% cash back benefit. Are your funds safe? Yes, they are FDIC insured up to $250,000, just like at any bank. They have a good savings interest rate. The base rate is 4%, but if you commit to
0.4%, Kathy.
Sorry,
I just want to make sure. Yeah, 0.4%. But if you make a donation to any one of our 50 plus climate nonprofits, we'll double that to 0.8%, which may not seem like a lot, but it is, one of the top almost 5 to 10 out of all 12,000 banks and credit unions in the country right now. So just make any donation of any amount, $1, $5, $10 to any one of our 50 plus climate nonprofits, and we double that rate to the 0.8.
So thank you very much. And I hope that you do check Atmos out. So we'll go now and meet with Al Kyte and hear about his garden in May, the beauty of peak bloom. So Al is a longtime garden tour host. His garden has been on every tour since 2007. It's a 50-year-old garden. It started out like this in the 70s, but the drought was on, and Al thought, why keep pouring water on our lawn? This is what the garden has looked like in recent years. And he's got a lovely collection of manzanitas in the front garden. This is the back garden before. And here's a back garden after. I'm going to say that Al designed and installed this garden himself, and he just did a fantastic job. Here's another photo in the back garden. And Al has a 25-foot long stream with a beach and meanders and a pool at the bottom. I know turtles lay eggs in the garden. This garden has attracted 90 species of birds as well as 18 species of native bees. So let's go now and meet with Al. Good afternoon, Al.
Hi, Kathy.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, it's nice to see you again. So Al worked with the California Bluebird Recovery Program, who made a series of 6 videos on gardening with California native plants in Al's garden. And you can see those videos on the Bringing Back the Natives YouTube channel. If you search on Al Kyte, we have actually a playlist of those 6 videos, and they're beautifully done. Shall we go now, Al, and watch the beauty of peak bloom in May?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Well, good day to you, and welcome to our garden here in Moraga. I'm Al Kyte, and we're doing a series of short videos on dimensions of beauty in the California native plant garden. And usually we've been going 2 months at a time and looking at the beauty that occurs at different times of year. Today we're just going to concentrate on 1 month, the month of May, because May is the time in which we have peak bloom in our garden. So our topic is the beauty of peak bloom. And you might ask, well, is there just one peak that blooms? Well, I think there's a number of peaks. Some offer different things than others. In about the middle of February, I think we have our first peak bloom in the garden. And it's because two plants come together and have their maximum floral display at the same time. One is the manzanitas, the other is the chaparral currant. And when they bloom together, it kind of kicks off the color in the garden for the year, and the flowering season, as it were, and provides nectar for the big bees. Our second blooming peak really comes toward the end of March, and that's really two other plants that come together in Kyte: the California lilac, the ceanothus, and the California poppy. So we have a lot of blue and gold kicking off the second peak bloom. And tagging along with that are the white monkey flowers and the sulfur buckwheats and the iris. So that second peak bloom is the peak that brings color to the garden, and probably the most vibrant of the peaks. So what is it that would make the bloom, the third peak, the one that occurs in early May, even better? Well, to me, there's one thing lacking in that second peak bloom, and that is that two colors in the spectrum are still missing as I look across the ground. One is the blue, and the second is pink. And those two plants that provide that for me come in early May. One is the foothill penstemon that gives blue, and the meadow onion that brings pink. And so at that point in time, I have every single color represented throughout the garden. And so this is what I consider peak bloom. Why? Because this is the time of year that I'd most like to have people come and visit the garden. Fortunately, that timing coincides with the bringing back the native tour. Now, what other plants start blooming in May for us? Well, in the colors of red, you got a bush form. You have the spice bush, Calycanthus occidentalis. The spice bush, of course, is the plant that you smell it, and it smells kind of like wine or a fruit of some kind, old winery. And the bloom in blue, of course, we talked about the foothill penstemon, but we also get brodea, what we call blue dicks. And that's a nice form of blue. And of course, if you had a bunch of annuals, you'd get even more blue blooming plants because they love to come forth in May. In the bushes, you have the Cleveland sage blooming, and even the yerba santa has a bluish tinge to the bloom. In purple, we have the woolly blue curls and the verbena already blooming in bush form, but now we get a ground cover purple bloom called roving sailor that Pete Veilleux introduced me to a few years ago. In pink, joining the meadow onion, is checker bloom, a wonderful pink, low-blooming plant that attracts butterflies. And in the bushes, I put in some plants that I've seen along the Sierra mountain streams called the mountain spirea. In yellows, the only yellow bloom that starts in May is really a faint yellow in my elderberry blossoms, elderberry tree. And then in white, we have yerba manza on the ground, and we have mock orange, which is a beautiful blooming plant. The last of our ceanothus, and one of my favorites, blooms this time of year, and that's the deer brush, Ceanothus integerimus. And in the front, in the chaparral, we have chemise blooming, and we have the Matilaha poppy. And so we have a number of plants that bloom in May. So why is the second half of May not as good in bloom as the first half? Well, the poppies have been going for a couple of months now, and despite my best deadheading efforts, there's fewer poppy blooms. They'll still go on for a while, but there's just not as vibrant, and nor as many of them. And the meadow onion, which gave us that nice pink, is already starting to fade. Peak bloom is a good time to design your color distribution for the following year. And you do that by taking your views of your peak bloom and taking a picture of it and looking at it and saying, well, how could I make this even more beautiful next year? So you can In this picture, for example, you can add, I think, add white and some orange toward the middle of the picture, and off to the lower right, some pink and maybe a little more blue, and make it even a more interesting color display the following year. And when you put in plants like this, put in 2 or 3, not just one, because the plants are small that first year, and you do want to see a splash of color in these areas. I learned to put in 3 plants instead of 1 some years back, and I planted 1 native plant in an area where I thought the guides would tell me, this is exactly in your yard where this plant should do the best. I put it there and it didn't do well. And somebody gave me another plant of the same species, and I just happened to plant it about 10 feet away and kind of ignored it. And all of a sudden I noticed it was really flourishing. So I learned to put in, if I really like a plant, to put it where I think it should go, but then put in another plant or 2, 10 feet either side of it, and see where the plant really wants to grow. And then in your subsequent plantings, to put your plants more in that area. I think the peak bloom is a good time to see combinations of colors, like our primary colors, the yellow of a monkey flower combined with the blue of penstemon and the red of the poppy, or maybe yellow, white, and orange, with the orange and white being poppies and the yellow being a buckwheat, or a bloom that shows a lot of pink, and sometimes the Clarkia pink ribbons blooms a little early, and so you can get pink bloom with Carpentaria and Verbena in the background, get a nice mix of colors, and that's always fun. I think one of the things that I look forward to in month of May is seeing the baby animals. I see my first families of quail usually, and this month, just as soon as May came along, there was a family with 12 babies running around, and they started camping out under one of our verbena plants and would come out each day. With mixed feelings, I saw we had a family of brush rabbits this year, because I know they eat plants, but they're very cute. And in our pond, we have baby turtles along with the adults, because last year's hatch of turtles is now about 3 inches long, and they were big enough to put back in the pond with the adults. So the peak bloom is really the time that I plan for, that I look forward to, and see how people respond to the changes that I might have made. And it's a special time in the garden. I hope I've given you some good ideas to think about. Thank you.
Well, that was terrific, Al.
That was of the 6, the most colorful of the videos that we've seen in your garden.
Well, I don't know. Last year, we did it last year. It took us all year to do the whole series. And it was I think, a particularly good year last year. It was a fortunate year for us to do it in that way.
Well, your garden has always looked good every time I have seen it. So can you tell us about watering your garden, like how often you water and what your watering regime is?
Usually I just water the annuals and maybe the very young plants in the summertime. If we get dry winters, sometimes I'll just use a sprinkler at the end of a hose and give it the effect of a winter rain, which they do. Even the manzanitas really seem to rely on that. So I might do that just very occasionally, maybe once a month during really dry winters.
Mm-hmm. And let me say that, Al, I forget what time we're doing it, but on the day that your garden is open on Sunday, May the 1st, you have a conversational opportunity. So if people want to just sit down with you and gab for a period of time, they can do that. Is that right?
Yeah, I've kind of changed the way I do the tour things. It's a 2 o'clock thing. And what I do, I have a list of topics that people may want to choose to talk about. So I let that particular group dictate to me which topics they want to hear about. And that's kind of what I key on. And they can blurt out questions at any time. They can leave whenever they want without me feeling bad about it. And it works out pretty well, I think.
There's also, Al has written, I can't remember, but I would say about a dozen different articles on different aspects of native plant gardening and managing his garden over the years. And that's just a wonderful source of information if you want to find out more about native plant gardening. Is there any of those in particular you can think of that might be useful for somebody who's just starting out, Al?
Well, there's a couple of them. I think one I call shifting perspectives in native plant gardening, because over the 50 years I was doing this, that my perspective kept growing and changing because the whole field was changing and moved from just conservation of water into restoration and habitat, and it just and more into local rather than when I started, you were lucky to get any kind of a California native plant. And so a lot of us that started at that time, have statewide. And of course, one of my things that I was really interested in early on was surrounding myself with plants that I loved to see when I was out backpacking or fishing or something, and bringing them to our garden. And it turns out that was one of the incidental benefits of that is now that I'm 87 years old, I can't get out to some of those places, but I don't have to because I've brought those plants to me. So that's at least one little argument for kind of keeping a few statewide natives.
Well, you really have brought nature home to your garden. You've got a fantastic job at bringing in birds and butterflies and bees to your garden.
I think that's one of the most interesting, the comments I hear the most is, we see so many birds here. And that was another thing I started with, because I wasn't seeing any birds in that. And you showed that initial picture of our garden, of just lawn, Algerian ivy and juniper and a fruitless mulberry tree or something. And I wasn't seeing birds. And, I grew up in the flatlands of Oakland, and I didn't even see a mammal there. And very few birds came out here. I expected to see more, and I wasn't. But once I went to this class in 1972, I think it was, on attracting birds to your garden. And it wasn't about birds, it was about native plants that attract birds. And, that's when a light went on in my head. All of a sudden, gardening was no longer a chore. It was something all of a sudden that I really enjoyed doing, looking forward to.
Also, your garden attracts not only birds, but I know children. I'm sure that your grandchildren have had a wonderful time playing in your garden.
Yeah, I thought giving up a lawn would detract from their fun, but the native plant garden is a place of great discovery for them. I get that little when the kids are very young, they'll take a few leaves and a few of my gravel things off of one of my piles in the back and go up and container of water from the falls, and they'll mix their own concoction and pretend food and things, and just all kinds of discovery. And I have manzanitas that form kind of a native plant jungle gym where my granddaughter was able to climb about 15 steps through about 3 or 4 manzanitas without her feet touching the ground. I mean, that was a fun place for those kids to get up and perch in the trees. So that was fun. Listening to Pete, who I enjoy, of course, tremendously. I realized that one of my manzanitas I've been looking at for over 40 years now. So when it's Dr. Hurd, so it's gotten pretty darn big.
And you've had a wildlife cam in your garden, haven't you? To see what's coming.
Yeah, I started out with putting a tracking pit in behind our back fence because I wanted to teach my grandchildren about tracking. I'm not an expert, but I know a few things about it. And I was seeing too many partial prints. And so I decided, well, let's find out what's really here. So I put on a trail cam back there, and I was surprised to see that we had, gray foxes living back there. And I knew there'd be coyotes, deer, raccoons, skunks, and possum, which there were. And about 20 years ago, I think we had a deer killed by a mountain lion back behind our back fence. And so there's this kind of little corridor for animals that's back there. It's certainly a nice thing to have, nearby.
Well, your garden is so beautiful and it's so natural and it's so inviting. It seems so much like a place that one would just want to go and spend time in.
I've had that comment where people would say, "You don't mind if I stay in camp overnight?" Do you? So people are kind of interesting in their reactions, but it's certainly been a lot of fun. I really encourage people to get out there this year if possible, because this is likely my last year on the tour. So if they want to see it, this is a good time, I think.
This is a good time then. Well, Al, I'm going to bid you farewell. Do you want to stay on if people have questions on the Zoom?
I will.
Okay, good. So I want to thank you. And I want to say again, you can visit Al's garden on Sunday, May the 1st. You can see several videos, well, all 6 that were made in the series, plus I think another one that we did the first year of the tour on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube page. We'll go on now. So when I was young and would get in the car with my mom and dad, they would warm up the car before they started driving. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember it so clearly. But I learned recently that if your car is idling for more than 30 seconds, it's better to turn the car off and turn it back on again than to leave it running. So if you can save gas, save money, and spare the air by turning off your car's engine if you'll be waiting more than 30 seconds. You'll be protecting your and your family's lungs, saving money on gas, and as car exhaust is the #1 source of air pollution in the Bay Area, you'll be helping to keep our skies blue. If you're waiting to pick someone up from school, sports practice, or the library, if you're sitting at a drive-through or a car wash, just turn your engine off. How can you help? You can learn more at idlefreebayarea.org. I have to say that since I heard this, I turn my car off all the time these days. I just don't let it idle at all if I think it's going to be take any time. So let me say now that if you haven't had the chance yet, I hope you'll support the tour. It takes more than a year to coordinate each garden tour. This was a challenging year because we have the 2-day online tour, the 2-day in-person tour. We've added the Green Home Tour component to both of these events. If you haven't yet had the chance to contribute, you can make a donation via the donations button on the tour's homepage at bringingbackthenatives.net, through Venmo at Bringing Back the Natives, on the tour's GoFundMe page, or you can mail in a check. So we'll go now to our last garden. This is Kat Weiss's garden in Livermore. So Kat, as she said, to avoid shocking the neighbors, up until now, Kat has chosen a Zen-like approach to transforming her garden. Over the last 6 years, she's been removing the non-natives little by little and replacing them with our own local keystone species, which provide the best habitat for our winged friends. Newly installed native plants that are of the greatest value to wildlife include blue and coast live oaks, a variety of manzanitas, California lilacs, currants, sages, and buckwheats. But this last year, though Kyte has operated with the Zen-like approach, she seems to have lost some of her peaceful Zen-like mojo because a number of the large non-native ornamentals have been removed from this garden and replaced by newly planted natives. This video was made in March before many of the plants were in flower, but Kyte has included photos of the plants when they will be blossoming so you can see what the garden will look like over the course of the year. Let us go now and look at Kyte's video.
Hello, welcome to my garden. My name is Kyte Weiss, and I operate Kyte Weiss Landscape Design. This is our home in Livermore, California. We've been here 6 years now, and it was an existing landscape of the pepper trees you see beyond you, a field of jasmine, and a host of other non-native plants that were in various stages of maturity. So over the years, I have been whittling away at transitioning this landscape to a California native landscape. So I'm going to take you on a tour. Here's our lovely deer grass, as if you were visiting yourself. And I'm going to tell you about some of the challenges and the design issues. One of the challenges that we'll see in the front yard, well, I'll see in the front yard, is the evidence of gophers. And they have really changed the landscape here. And I have planted a lot of plants that have died by gopher death. So I am now planting in gopher cages, but it means that a lot of the natives in the front are also babies. So what we did in the front after ripping out there was a fake lawn here, is we brought in some earth from back in the backyard and created a mound. I also brought in a lot of Calistoga boulders here that you can see frame these lovely little lupin, which are of course here and then gone. And then they're supported by a sticky monkey, which it's a little too early to see that one in full regalia. A little too early for the Grindelia stricta, the gum plant, which is quite native to this area. There is a prostrate form, which doesn't go quite as bonkers as the native species does. And this is a celestial sage that in about a month or so will probably wake up. So I've been trying manzanitas. I've been trying Seacliff buckwheats and California fuchsias. And on this day in mid-April, after a lovely little rain, are still well asleep. Over here, this is my beach area where I've used the 3/8 decomposed granite, not to be confused with the bluestone crushed stone or the ginger fines, both of which are fine options for using for ground cover. And this is the one upsize from California gold fines. And I like it because it really does look like granite. And it doesn't sink in as much as the California gold fines do. And we've got some fescues in here. I've got some yarrows. There's some penstemons. These are ocean pearl boulders, which are absolutely gorgeous. They've got a very silvery hue to them. We also have a garbage truck. Let's pause. The mound that you see before you, that's covered with black sage, Brandegee sage, pineapple sage, David's Choice Artemisia, Pacific Mist Manzanita, was formed when we dug a pool. I know, don't hate me, my kids wanted it and it's awesome. We also recycled all of this Three Rivers stone from a previous pond in the back and built a wall. And up here in this front meadow, we've got the Baccharis pilularis, pigeon point. There's a little white sage. Here's my little baby blue oak. We also have blue grama grass, Bouteloua gracilis. And this stone edge you see here is Calistoga. It comes out of Napa Calistoga. This is called single head, and it stretches up into double head size, as you can imagine, the size of your head. And it's a good size for holding back gravel, making a little edge, delineating areas. And it's gorgeous too because it's got the gray tones and the warm tones. Here's an emerald carpet manzanita, and this is my prize baby oak that is a little challenging to see on video, I know, but he's up to about 8 feet tall. And we ripped out a pistache tree this year to give him room. He was an acorn drop. The pistache, as you know, has wonderful fall color, but it's just not feeding anybody. So I opted for the oak instead. Buckwheats do really well here in Livermore. That is a California buckwheat with all of its blossoms cut off and has yet to come back into flower. So I think as long as the gophers don't keep attacking, things should grow nicely. I've got heat, I've got drip irrigation, I've got gopher baskets. This is one of the California fuchsias that has spread, but it's contained in this area, and I'm just gonna let it spread, do its thing. And here's the sentinel manzanita, just finished flowering. Got its little baby apples going. This is my newest bed, where I'm trying out some things that I got from Pete Veilleux at East Bay Wilds. Got a little golden fleece, little baby, and a globe mallow, which has this gorgeous orangey color to its flowers. And we've got a seaside daisy, which obviously unflowering, doesn't look like much. I love using pots, and natives do really well in pots often. Here is the magnificent Dudleya pulverulenta in all of its pre-flowering glory. Little baby oak in a pot. Hi, friend. And got a little St. Catherine's lace buckwheat here in a pot also. And this was a seedling from a friend's garden, which she gifted me. And he's pretty happy right here. These are succulents in this nifty Corten pot that I got at Wayfair, if anyone's interested. And here's my view, as if you were here with me. It's my little Niger seed for the birds. Oh, also fun. I don't want to make you dizzy, but I have 2 lanterns here. These are like my finch condos, and the finches have been building away. And then we're going to walk down the path here. The back of the mound, where I recycled some sod from a project. This is a native mow-free sod. It's a blend of 3 different fescues, and there were just a bunch of triangular weird chunks. So I plopped it here, and it looks fabulous. It's bordering my path, also recycled from other tear outs. Some new babies over here. These vegetable bins, boxes, flower boxes, were faced with this wonderful product called Out Deco Panel. It's recycled compressed eucalyptus. made in Australia. And you can use it as a screen. You can use it like I did. All sorts of wonderful things that you can do. And here's just about the single thing that's in full glory.
Mid-March here.
This lovely ceanothus. I am trying out mountain mahogany. I've got some evergreen currants. I've got Linichera hispidula, the honeysuckle, native honeysuckle. Here's John Dorley, manzanita, which is one of my absolute favorites. It has super beautiful 4-season interest, flowers, red edges, just lovely. Howard McMinn just passing. And Physocarpus capitatus, the 9-bark. He's little because the birds, sorry, not the birds, but the deer keep munching away, but I'm determined. So he's just pruned by nature. And then we walk down the path here past our manzanita. We've got some baby ribes in this bed. This is also a very shady area. So I've got some Western columbine. I've got yerba buena, which is really lovely. And there's some Fragaria chiloensis in here, beach strawberry. We've also got Diamond Heights ceanothus coming out of a wink wink pot. Heuchera sanguinea. Vaccinium ovatum, still a baby, but it will be great food. Spice bush just coming in. And now we get to go into the utility area. Just like if you were here. And you could see my worm bin and my current favorite, gopher basket. I do have some redwoods here that were here when I came. So I appreciate the shade and do what I can to minimize the water use. Heuchera maxima, quite lovely. And some other babies. We've got a couple of ferns in here. A couple of baby ribes. This is the compost tumbler, which changed companies. I believe it's still being produced by under the name Compost Tumbler. It is awesome because you can put a wheelbarrow under it when you're done spinning. Here is some beautiful ironwork done by a blacksmith on Alameda. And then I'm going to take you from another view. So these are our lovely California fuchsias, which were spectacular in late summer and fall, all the way through the fall, with scarlet tubular flowers that the hummingbirds love. They used to have gray leaves, and now, early February, they look absolutely crispy fried. Well, they're not. They are just perennials that really do go all the way back down to the root zone when they've done their business. So if you kind of peel back all this dead outer stuff, you see that the California fuchsia sprouts from its rootstock. So when the last flower goes, or when you feel like, oh, okay, I think it's time, you can just cut this baby all the way to the ground around now, sometime in January, early February. And that's when the days start to get a little warmer and they will just bounce right back again. There we have it. All ready to go for spring. So don't be afraid. Just go ahead and cut off the dead stuff, throw it in your composter, and the California fuchsia will pop back and delight all of you, little hummingbirds and people alike. So here's a late season sticky monkey flower, the mimulus, and you can see that it hasn't quite peaked out with new spring growth, but all the dead flowers from last season are still hanging on the leaves, which often makes people think, oh, it's dying. But it's not, it's just sticky. So you can go along the leaves if you are so inclined and just kind of pull off the dead flower bits and the dried leaves from last season if you want to. But this is a task that you don't need to do, because in a few weeks, this plant's going to spring back from all these little nodes with new growth, and it's going to push out all the dead stuff. But, you know, if you're looking for a task and you've got your audiobook in your head, then you can certainly go and clean up your little sticky monkeys. Welcome to the backyard. We've got our wine or our seltzer in hand, and we're going to tour the backyard here, back garden. All of this is new to us. It was an enormous fake lawn that we blew up, and there was a fountain here that we took out and created this mound.
Lavatera acergentifolia,
which was in full flower not too long ago, actually. I've had some challenges here. I'm trying meadow grasses. I do have a dog. The dog enjoys tearing through the meadow grasses. Here's a volunteer Baccharis and some Penstemon and Eatonii. They're so fun. And behind that is a Senecio, yellow and gold. Nah, that's not right. Silver and gold that I got from Pete. A Salvia pachyphylla and woolly sunflower. And this fun thing is the Camasonia, the beach primrose, which has decided to reseed itself all over the place. But I don't mind, because it's not doing anybody any harm, and it's beautiful. I just pull it out where I don't like it. There's a fire pit. Recycled wine barrel. Put some varnish on that puppy so that it doesn't fall apart. You can watch a game in here. I'm sorry, we're gonna watch Doug Tellemy's talk in here. And here's my pride and joy, outdoor shower. I love this. This is recycled manzanita from my good friend Maggie Cutler's property, cut by permission. And if any of you knew Maggie, we lost Maggie this year. She was the owner of Mines Road Natives. Her brand was Winter Creek Ranch, and she produced some of the finest plants I used to use in my gardens. And I miss her terribly. So my manzanita is in honor of her. And here's the deep back garden, more Corten vegetable planters. I'll walk down the ocean pearl boulders here. It might be time to prune the collards. And out here, I have been messing around with that native mow-free sod. Little beach strawberry. And this is cool. Some Eriogonum arborescens, Santa Cruz Island buckwheat, reseeded themselves in the gravel of the fire pit from these plants just beyond. We've got the Eriogonum latifolium, Eriogonum arborescens, which the birds love to pick apart. Eriogonum fasciculatum, California buckwheat. The buckwheats are doing really well. I keep trying Ceanothus. with variable luck between the gophers and whatever else is going on back here. Another Dudleya. One of the Dudleyas that I've had in a pot is now 16 years old, which is super cool. Here's an Anchor Bay Ceanothus that just finished flowering. And another Globe Mallow. St. Catherine's Lace. Buckwheat. And that is the prostrate form of the gum plant. So he'll have yellow flowers deep into the summer, which is fun. So that, along with our California fuchsia here, gives you that late season color. Here is a disc goal if you are a disc golf aficionado. And a Bee's Bliss sage. This one is enormous. It's about 8 feet around, 4 feet tall. And look at that! Just in time for the end of the tour, the sun came out. Thank you for visiting. I wanted to close by showing you some photographs of some of the beautiful plants in my garden at different times of the year, other than the moment when this video was taken, to show you that there is plenty of color and wonderful species. So enjoy, accompanied by a bird recording that I took from the front yard.
Well, that was a terrific video. I wanted to say that Kat is not with us in person, but she is with us both in spirit and also on the chat. So if you have any questions for Kat, you can type them in and she'll respond. Before we go on to anything else, I want to say that Kat is a friend and colleague of many years. She's a beautiful garden designer. She works in the Livermore, Tri-Valley area. You can find her contact information under Find a Designer on the Garden Tours website. She designs beautiful native plant gardens, and her mother's garden will be on the tour on Sunday, May 1st. That's Carol Hardesty, and Kat designed her mom's garden, of course. And that garden that we just saw of Kat's, while many of the plants that we saw just now were newly planted, and that video was made between February and March, you can tell she's going to have a lot of color with the monkey flower, the fuchsia, the purple penstemons, the creamy buckwheats, the yellow lupins, the manzanitas, the blue-purple California lilac. And I also wanted to take my hat off to Kat, because she's another one of these people that really rose to the challenge of making their own video. Kat is not a professional videographer. You may be surprised to hear she is a landscape designer, but she made a video for us this year, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. So thank you, Kat, for taking on that task. So let me go now and share my screen. So this was before Kat did a lot of work on her garden. She took out the breath of heaven here. And so she has a number of small plants in their place, but I look forward to seeing it, her garden next year or later on when it's had a chance to fill in a little bit. So we'll just go a few things in closing. If you would please fill out the evaluation that was in the link that was sent to you this morning. It's also on the Garden Tours website. That would be really helpful to us. Goodbye, Kat. Kat said she's sorry she can't be here live. Nice to have you in spirit and on the chat. Arinda Books has made the tour a great offer. If you buy any of these books, they'll make a contribution to the tour. These are the 3 Doug Tallamy books. You can call Arinda Books at 925-254-7606. And these California specific books are also the same deal for the tour, Designing California Native Plant Gardens, Garden Allies. This new one is Native Plant Gardening for Birds, Bees, and Butterflies is just coming out now. And then there's California Gardening a Month by Month maintenance book by Helen Popper. The East Bay Green Home Tour, if you're interested in learning more about electrification and green home features, is a Saturday and Sunday, May 14 and 15 from 10 to 1. It's online. You can register at eastbaygreenhome.com. The in-person tour will take place Saturday, April 30th for the Bayside Gardens, Sunday, May 1st for the Inland Gardens. You will be emailed the maps, links to the maps and the garden addresses later on this week. Let's see. And let me thank our major sponsors. We're very grateful to their support. And our other sponsors and these sponsors as well. And I'd like to say in closing that I hope this event has helped and inspired you to include native plants in your own garden. I hope to have all your own gardens on the tour one day if you live in Alameda or Contra Costa counties. If you have any questions, you're welcome to call or email me. My information is under Contact Us on the Garden Tours website. And hope to see you in 2 weeks on the in-person tour. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Wonderful, Kathy. I'm going to close down the chat for everybody. In just a moment, I'm going to download the chat. So I've got it.
And Jessica, are we sending a link to the chat or did we want to get people to put in there?
Yep. So I'm going to put them, both of the chats from yesterday and from today, into a folder. So then Kathy can send it out to everybody. And I'm going to end the call now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.